How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
voice inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? Oh, I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final scene of
Who the fuck is Karlyn? She's just some sweet lady. She's like in a knitting. She does like a knitting stream. She's like a knitting YouTuber. She does knitting.
Can we grow up a little bit and
Alt
not
Girl
be
sent
retarded?
$200. Have you
Please.
seen the work of Karlyn Borysenko? Anti-commie cult leader and is obsessed with looking at what actual far-left communists are talking about and organizing today, infiltrating them. They infiltrated the universities, schools, media. She has the receipts to back it up. Primary source evidence. Infestation is dire and she calls Republicans idiots eating slop. Agree.
Thank you for the big super chat. Yeah, oh, I know Karlyn B. She's solid. She's funny. I
The
like
Great
her.
Noticer sent $200.
And lastly, we ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. And any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
We please ask that there will be no recording or streaming of today's sessions from the floor. Any disruptive behavior today could result in being removed from the call. So, just be a nice person. So with the little housekeeping things out of the way, let's jump right in.
Again, we ask no recording or streaming of today's session.
We ask that there be no recording or streaming of today's session from the floor. Any disruptive behavior in today's session will result in being removed from the call.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her. Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo der Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein Jahr weiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist. Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn. Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, und ein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein Jahr weiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist. weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Rom links, 2, 3, Rom links, 2, 3, und ein Platzgenosse ist. Weil ich heim in die Arbeitereinheitsfront, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Now, before I go into my whole spiel about Socialism Saturday, I have now yet another new microphone. The new microphone has arrived. So, can everyone hear me? Is the new microphone working? Is the technology set up? Did I figure it out? I don't know, man. I'm kind of sick. Everyone has to give me. I need a lot of leeway right now because like I am barely making it through the days. You guys don't know how much I've been sleeping lately because I'm so effing sick. Okay, the new microphone is good. The new microphone is clear. Awesome. Microphone W. We'll see how long this one lasts. The last one lasted a couple weeks. So, guys, welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real far left, the furthest of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian. We are not watching Democrats on Socialism Saturday because Democrats are not socialists. We are not watching liberals or progressives on Socialism Saturday because liberals and progressives, no matter how many times the conservatives scream it and cry it and say it, liberals and progressives are not socialists and communists. In fact, real communists, real socialists, real Antifa will tell you flat out they hate Democrats, they hate liberals, they don't want to be associated with them. So we don't watch any of them on Socialism Saturday. When we watch Socialism Saturday, we are watching the farthest of the far left. If you want to know where every crazy idea comes from in the world today, from critical race theory and gender ideology in schools, to queering and transing kids, to drag queen story hour, to climate change, to free Palestine, to abolish the police, to all of the protests that are going out inside outside the ICE facility right now, it's the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. Can I try not to yell as much? No, fuck right off. No, absolutely not. And you know what? This is JC. I don't know who the fuck you are or how long you've been on my channel, but you picked possibly the worst week that you could have picked to ask me that question. Because you know what, guys? You know what? I'm just going to say it. I am out of fucks. I am completely out of fucks. You thought I was out of fucks before? No. I'm completely out of fucks now. Because you know what? This is our first Saturday in a couple of weeks, Socialism Saturday in a couple of weeks, because I was traveling for the last 2 weeks. I was traveling, going undercover at multiple far left events all over the country. I came back home with a metric boat ton of propaganda that I haven't even had a chance to sit down and look at yet, because I also got some sort of viral fucking plague while I was away. And so I have been sick for the last 2 fucking weeks. And does anyone want to guess? Does anyone want to guess the number one comment that I've been getting from right-wingers since I got back from this undercover marathon trip? I went undercover at multiple far-left events on this trip. I got sick. I got pepper sprayed. Even being sick as a fucking dog, I was still out there like all night in Portland running around trying to get video. Does anyone want to guess the number one comment I've gotten from the right in the week since I've been back? Have people on the right been saying, Karlyn, we can't wait to see all the propaganda you picked up on the road? Have people from the right been saying, Karlyn, I can't wait to learn all of the things you learned when you were undercover at these events? Have people been on the right been saying any of these things? Does anyone want to guess what the number one comment that I've been getting from right-wingers? Yeah, that's it. That's it. The number one comment, and it's not even close, guys, that I've been getting from right-wingers for the past fucking week is, you're fat and ugly and you're secret Antifa. Literally. So I went on a trip for a week and a half where I went undercover at multiple far left events. I got like a shit ton of their propaganda. We have a ton of work to do with analyzing it. And the number one fucking thing that I've been hearing from the right wing is, you're ugly and fat and you're secret Antifa. And if there were comments balancing it out, that would be one thing. It's not, but I'm not hearing that at all. And so you know what? I've been taking it easy the past week. I've been sleeping a lot because I have been very, very, very sick. And when I log online, I don't get, Karlyn, we can't wait for you to come back and show us what you got on this trip. I don't get, Karlyn, I can't wait to look at all those cool zines that you've got sitting in a giant pile in your office. I get, Karlyn, you're fat and ugly and you're secretly Antifa. You're like, literally, this is the rumor that's being spread about me. And so you know what? You want to come on my channel and say, can you stop yelling? No. 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 Not going to stop yelling. Nope, not going to stop yelling at all. Not going to stop yelling in any way. Yeah, I'm secret Antifa, weigh in on Jesse Waters regularly these days. Yeah, I should probably do a regular weigh-in on Fox News because, of course, monitoring how much I weigh is the most critical thing that right-wingers care about. It's not all the data I have about Antifa. It's not all the analysis that I'm doing about Antifa that is ahead of literally every other fucking person on the fucking internet. It's you're fat, you're ugly, shut the fuck up, you stupid leftist, you're secret Antifa. It's right-wingers trying to destroy my nonprofit. It's right-wingers trying to destroy all of my work. That's the number one thing that I've been hearing for the past week when I haven't been laying in bed trying to sleep because I'm fucking sick. So, you know what? It's been a rather clarifying week, I gotta say. It's been a rather clarifying week about what the right wing cares about. It's been a rather clarifying week about the type of reception that I can expect my work to get from the conservative right. It has there's been a lot of fucking clarification in the last week, I'll tell you that. But you know what? It doesn't actually really matter because we just keep pushing forward. Listen, like there are a lot of new people that are trying to create content off of the protests, especially in Portland. There are a lot of new people showing up who have never been streaming before, who are brand new to politics, who don't really know what the fuck is going on. And they're all trying to cash in on what's going on in Portland and Chicago and all that. And you know what? Listen, man, I don't begrudge anyone creating content about anything, but here's what I know. I've been doing this for almost 6 years. I've been doing this for almost 6 fucking years. When you create content on the internet, there are ups and there are downs and there are peaks and there are valleys. And it's like you go like this. And so there are a lot of people that are calling me secret Antifa, especially out in Portland or around that whole thing, that are very, very new to this space that quite frankly don't know what the fuck they're talking about and don't know what the fuck they're doing. There are people who have never gotten attention for creating content before that are all of a sudden getting a lot of attention creating content. Now, just to be really clear, I'm not talking about Tommy. I actually really like Tommy, just like I think he's just like a nice guy. I'm not talking about Tommy. I'm talking about all the people surrounding Tommy at this point. I'm talking about stupid blonde women who are showing up at the Portland ICE facility trying to fuck all the big MAGA influencers because that absolutely is happening. I'm talking about people who are just glomming onto the whole thing. And what they think is they think this ride is going to last forever. They think, oh, we're at the top of the mountain right now and this ride is going to last forever. Well, I've been doing this for 6 years. I've had many times when I've been at the top of the mountain. I've also had many times where I've gone through the valleys. The ride doesn't last forever. The only thing that matters is when you show up consistently over time and you do what you have a focused area that you want to do over time. Yeah, exactly. So if you have, and just, yeah, to be really clear, I'm talking about Right Side Rebel, and I'm not the only one that thinks this. You know what? I'm just spilling all the tea. I told you guys I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm spilling all the tea. Right Side Rebel has slept with multiple MAGA influencers around the Portland ICE facility, and anyone who is out there has seen this. I'm not the only one who saw this. Right Side Rebel has been having a lot of sex with a lot of people with a lot of followers because that's the only way that, I swear to God, I'm not even the one that originally, there were other people that originally pointed that out to me, by the way. And then I started paying attention and I was like, oh shit, she is fucking them all. Oh shit. So you want to get laid by a bimbo blonde girl? Just go to Portland, put on a MAGA hat, like get a streaming camera, and you will get yourself laid by a bimbo blonde. I promise you. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? When you do things in public, it's everyone's business. When you do things in public, it's everyone's fucking business. And everyone who's been watching the streams knows this. So, you know, whatever, but that is the MAGA influencer sphere, guys. It's stupid fucking women who think that they can fuck their way to internet clout, and stupid men who are just trying to get famous who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. The mug is too small. It's my Boston University mug. Anyway, if you guys missed Socialism Saturday, this is pretty typical of what this whole affair is. But you know what? We do actually have real socialism to watch. So enough gossip, enough complaining. We're going to get back to work, okay? We're going to get back to work. We got a couple things we're going to be watching tonight on the stream. And these two things are both college lectures. So everyone should just, everyone should get ready to put on their academic hat. I don't know exactly how this is going to go, but we're going to give it a try. We're going to be watching a couple college lectures on the stream today, because what we do on Socialism Saturday is we go and we listen to the far left and we just listen to what they're saying. And I want to hear some ideas that are being propagated at colleges and universities about the so-called far right. I want to hear some ideas that are being propagated in higher education. And listen, guys, I know there's stuff going on in Chicago today. I'm sure there's stuff going on in Portland, but I really just want to focus back on what we typically do on Socialism Saturdays, and we don't always do protest coverage. And I want to watch what's being propagated at colleges and universities. So we got a couple lectures that we're going to be watching. The first one is from this place called the Foley Institute. Now, if we go to the Foley Institute's YouTube page, the Foley Institute at Washington State University, so not that far from Seattle, provides public affairs programming, education, blah, 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 blah. So the Foley Institute is an institute at a taxpayer-funded university in Washington. And last week, they hosted a lecture with someone named Matthew McManus. I don't know who Matthew is, but it's called The Radical Right Challenge to Liberal Democracy. Traditionally, liberals and conservatives alike in the U.S. have embraced the principles of liberal democracy. How does today's radical right threaten to upend it? Matthew McManus is assistant professor of political science at Spelman College. His latest book, The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism, was published in 2024. So this guy wrote a book called The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism. I actually think that a lot of socialists and communists might have an issue with being called liberal socialists. But you know what? We'll see what he has to say. This is a lecture at a taxpayer-funded university. And so we will watch and we will see what happened in this lecture. Then I got another lecture here. And shout out to the researcher over on X for posting about this one. This is at the Columbia Center for Contemporary Critical Thought. If we go into their YouTube page, the Columbia Center for Contemporary Critical Thought nourishes, explores, encourages, and supports critical reevaluation of a received wisdom of our time, blah, blah, blah. The center is a joint project of Columbia Faculty of Arts and Sciences and Columbia Law School. So when we hear the word critical thought or the phrase critical thought, what does that mean? Pop quiz for the chat. And I'm looking over on Rumble too. I see you, Aaron, over on Rumble. Good to see you. What does anytime someone says critical thought, what does that mean? When we hear basically the term critical anything, and particularly in regards to Columbia University, what do we think of when we think of the term critical thought? Commie shit? Yup, that's correct. Can anyone be a little bit more specific? What do we think of when we hear the word critical thought? Critical theory. Marxist critical theory. Does anyone know does anyone know where the home of critical theory is in the United States? What is the home of critical theory in the United States? The Frankfurt School, where critical theory was created, came over from Germany because they were all Jewish intellectuals that were getting kicked out of Germany. And they came over to the United States and they set up shop at where? Columbia University. Columbia University is the home of critical theory in the United States. So they have this thing called the Columbia Center for Critical Thought. And here is a lecture: What is to be done about the radical far right? Bannon, Lenin, and the dialectic of smashing the state. And this lecture was given 2 weeks ago at the Columbia Center for Critical Thought. Okay. So we're going to be listening to both these lectures. This one is about a half hour long, 40 minutes long. This one is about an hour long. So combine those, it's about an hour and a half, which is usually around the length of presentation that we listen to. But we're going to be listening to 2 different lectures today. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to sit back and we're going to hear what the far left has to say. If you are new, let me ask this. 1 in the chat if you are new to Socialism Saturday. 2 in the chat if you've only been watching Socialism Saturday for like a couple months. 3 in the chat if you have been watching Socialism Saturday for 3 months or longer. I need to do an evaluation of where people are right now because we've had a lot of new people come to the channel in the past couple months, and I do love it when new people come to the channel, but new people might have a little bit, you might be overwhelmed today. Okay, oh, we got a good mix. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. We got 1s, 2s, and 3s in the chat. So that means we have, and welcome to everyone who is brand new to Socialism Saturday. We love newbies here. Welcome to everyone who's only been around for a couple months. We love that you keep coming back. Of course, I love my regulars as well. What I want to articulate to the 1s and the 2s in the chat is that, listen, I have not listened to these lectures, but there is not an out of the realm possibility that there might be very academic, very complicated language tonight. Okay. Sometimes we watch Socialism Saturday and we listen to easy language. Sometimes we listen to lectures that are a bit more complicated. I want people to know up front, if you are new to watching socialism with me, you have to be prepared for the fact that you might not understand everything that's being said. Because part of part of why we watch the real far left is that they use a completely different dialect than us. It might sound like they're speaking English. They are not speaking English. They are speaking socialist. It is a completely different dialect. They may sound like they're using the same words, but they have completely different definitions for those words. And so one of the things we do on Socialism Saturday is we immerse ourselves in the language of the far left so that not only do we understand what their ideas are, not only do we understand what they're talking about in the real world right now, we also learn how to speak their language. It is not uncommon at all for people who are new to Socialism Saturday to not understand what the fuck is going on. And so for all the new people, if you are overwhelmed with the language, if you don't understand what's going on, please ask questions in the chat. I am more than open to answering questions. Other people in the chat who have been watching socialism with me for a while are more than open to answering questions. We want to help you guys learn the language, but if you are new to this, you have to understand that it is okay to not understand what's going on. Every single person that has ever learned how to speak socialist with me has been in a place before where we didn't understand what the fuck was going on. And the way that we learn what's going on is to immerse ourselves in their lectures and learn their language and ask questions, okay? It is not a bad reflection on you if you don't know something. It is not a bad reflection on you if you ask what you think might be a quote unquote dumb question. There are no dumb questions. They're just like, if you are asking questions in good faith, it's not a dumb question. If you're asking questions just to be a dick, that's dumb. If you're asking questions because you're trying to catch me up because you want to own me, because you think they're going to be, by the way, guys, they're probably going to be secret, like people who actually think I'm Antifa tonight, who are going to be in the chat trying to cause problems. We also have to be mindful of that. Well, you know what? That is just a benefit of the channel. So if you listen, guys, I'm going to be very, very blunt. If you can't handle me yelling at you, you cannot handle the far left. If you get all up in your fucking fifis because I raise my voice when you're being fucking ridiculous, then you cannot handle the far left. If you're going to be that much of a pussy that you whine and complain and bitch and moan and throw yourself on the ground and have a massive fucking hissy fit when people say things on the internet that you do not like, then you are not cut out to have anything to do with the far left. We do not coddle snowflakes here. We do not coddle snowflakes, okay? So if you're going to act like a retard, you are going to get treated like one, and that's just going to be the way it is. So before we get into it, guys, I just have a couple quick announcements. For everyone who is new to my work, the very best place to start if you want a crash course in the language of the far left is by heading over to my Substack. That is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Click on this button right here that says new to my work, start here. And what I want you to do is I want you to watch this class. Now, I'm not asking you to go do that right now. If you're watching Socialism Saturday right now, sit your ass down and stay here. But like, if you want a crash course after this, if you're like, holy shit, this socialist language is way more complex than I ever thought it was, head over to the Substack, watch the re-education course, an anti-communist introduction to the far left. It's about 90 minutes long. I show you clips of different socialist trainings. I break down their language. This is your crash course introduction that will get you up to speed on the language very quickly. If you like that one, you can head over to the masterclass, which is a 4-hour masterclass, How to Speak Socialist, in which you will get much more information. That's like the advanced level course. And if you want still more information, I also have an hour-long introduction to queer Marxism. We're not talking about queer Marxism tonight, but it's certainly a topic we talk a lot about on the channel. If you want to understand the evolution of queer Marxism, I did an hour-long lecture several weeks ago where I break it all down. And so this is your introductory course. Now, I am working on getting more stuff on the on my website, which is decodetheleft.com. That's going to be a project I'm hoping to get up by the end of the year, to get a dictionary on decodetheleft.com, to get all sorts of resources over there. And I want to do another round of live classes. But for right now, these are your introductory courses for how to speak the language of the left. And those are available completely for free over on my Substack, which is again, Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. Now, if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, because I am 100% funded by people like you, you can sign up on the Substack for $8 a month, $80 a year. That is the primary way I like people to support my work. And I want to thank everyone who is supporting my work on Substack. Gotten a ton of new supporters lately, and I really do appreciate that. That actually makes my work much easier. It gives me more resources to work with. I've got a lot of great ideas that once I get well again and once I'm like at 100%, I'm going to be doing some real cool stuff with those additional resources. And so I really, really do appreciate that. So make sure you're signing up on the Substack, supporting my work over there. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Red Menace Supply Company. This is my merchandise store. That is redmenacesupply.com. Now, because I've been sick, because I've been under the weather, the reason I'm bringing this up is the Halloween merchandise designs that were supposed to leave the store today, they're still in the store, okay? So we do have a couple limited edition Halloween designs that I was going to take out of the store, but because I've been just sick and sleeping so much, I haven't gotten to it yet. So this is the last, super last chance to get the limited edition Halloween merchandise designs in the Red Menace Supply Company, because they will be out of the store by Monday, but they're not out of the store right now. So if you want to pick up any of these designs, we got 4 limited edition designs that I did for Halloween. The first one is this collectivist design where we've got it in black and red. I actually own this t-shirt and it's one of my favorite t-shirts to wear. I just think it looks super cool. It comes on some other merch as well. We've got Marxist Utopia of the Dead, which comes on black, it comes on tan, it comes on brown, and it comes on this lighter color too. This was one of the best sellers from last year. We've got my favorite new design in the store, which is Communism, the Boot Never Lifts. It looks cool in black, but I'm going to be picking up this one in red for myself. I don't know why the red one doesn't come up, but there's what the red one looks like, and it looks fucking rad. I'm going to be buying that one myself. And then we have probably my favorite design, and the one that I think I've actually sold the most of this Halloween season, is Village of the Damned, also in black and in red. But this is based off of one of my favorite scary movies, which is Village of the Damned. I love that movie, except in my Village of the Damned, they had pride flags. Okay. So all 4 of those designs are still available in the Red Menace Supply Company, and they're not going to be available on Monday. So pick them up now if you want them. And we will be adding we'll be starting to get the Christmas edition designs in the store. Who does my art? I do, obviously. I do everything. I am a master of many trades. If you want a link, it is available in the description, although I can also put a link in the chat right there. There you go. There you go. There's other merch in the store as well, including this is the t-shirt that I wore on Fox News For people who like this, are you an anti-communist shirt? This is literally the shirt I wore on Fox News, and so you can actually get that shirt in the Unwoke Art Store, along with the rest of the McCarthy collection, because I got a whole bunch of McCarthy was right stuff in the store. We've got still the limited edition coffee. The limited edition coffee is going to be coming down as well. We got a bunch of other designs as well, the Plague Doctor designs, all sorts of cool stuff. And of course, all purchases in the Red Menace Supply Company do support the work I'm doing. And I really, really, really appreciate it. Yeah, the MAGA-tards think I'm Antifa. I literally have an anti-Antifa shirt in my own store, but the MAGA retards think that I'm Antifa. You know what? What can you do? What can you do? You can't help stupid. It is what it is. It is what it is. One last thing before we get started, and I just want to point this out. So, guys, last week, we declared war on Andy No. Why are we declaring war on Andy No? Because Andy No has declared war on me, and I don't take that shit lying down. Andy No decided to try to smear me on the internet by sharing a clip out of context to make me look crazy, because Andy No is a bitter little gay man sitting in London who isn't actually doing any real journalism for himself. Do you guys know that Andy No pays people to do his research for him? And the reason I know that is that at least one of the people that Andy No is paying to do research is DMing people about me, trying to smear me behind the scenes. So I found that out. And then later in the day, after I found that out, Andy No somehow posted a clip out of context that did not show me getting physically assaulted by MAGA retards outside the ICE facility. It only showed me yelling at the MAGA retards, because Andy No is a disingenuous little bitch of a former fucking journalist who sits in London all day doing Twitter journalism. Does he go out and cover Antifa in London? No. Does he go to Paris to cover Antifa? No. And you know what? I hear all these excuses all the time from Andy No's supporters. They say, Karlyn, Andy got physically assaulted by Antifa. So the fuck what? So the fuck what? Do you know how many people have gotten physically assaulted by Antifa? I've gotten physically assaulted by Antifa. Honey Badger Mom's gotten physically assaulted by Antifa. Katie Davis Court is getting physically assaulted by Antifa. Cam Higbee has gotten physically assaulted by Antifa. Do you know how many reporters out there? Elijah Schaefer has gotten physically assaulted by Antifa. Do you know how many reporters have gotten physically assaulted by Antifa that still continue to go out and do actual journalism? I'm so sick of the fucking excuses. It's not as though I have no sympathy for Andy No being physically assaulted, but when all I hear is Andy can't leave his house in London and do real journalism because he got assaulted 8 years ago, bro. Please. Please. So we are declaring war on Andy No. What I mean when I declare war on someone is I fight them intellectually. I don't do the underhanded shit that Andy does. I don't spread smear campaigns behind the scenes where I'm getting people to DM people with lies and nonsense. I don't post clips out of context. When I declare war on someone, I do it live on the internet so that everyone knows what I'm saying, so that everyone knows what I'm thinking. And then I say, we're going to fight this asshole intellectually. We do not fight with smear campaigns. We do not fight with defamation. We fight people intellectually to expose who they are and expose what fucking narrative shills they are. And now we are going after Andy No because Andy No has done pissed me off, and I have had enough. Okay? I have had enough. I've had a lot of stuff to say about this asshole over the years. I have kept it to myself, and I ain't doing it anymore. So I just want to point something out. Yesterday, Andy No posts this video of an Antifa person in Seattle. The Antifa person in Seattle was talking about how they had to cancel a direct action because it got exposed. I just want to point out how this game is played, guys. Here is what Andy posted. The Seattle far-left woman named Hannah Saunders criticizes Antifa comrades for letting a flyer for a planned violent attack get into the hands of an outsider. The direct action was called off after right-wingers said they come with cameras to document. Guys, who was the outsider that got the flyer? And again, we don't fight with smears. We don't fight with defamation. We don't fight with slander. We are so much better than Andy Ngo and his friends. We fight with fucking facts. Who is the outsider that got the flyer at the Seattle Anarchist Book Fair? That was me. That was me. And the reason I point this out is Andy Ngo has done this to me repeatedly, where Andy Ngo talks about my journalism, talks about things that I did when I was undercover with the far left, going to events that Andy has never even fucking heard of. But he refuses to mention me. He refuses to credit me for my work. And the reason he refuses to credit me is that he does not want you to know that I exist, because when you look at my work and my receipts, they blow his ass out of the water. And just in case anyone thinks I'm making it up, here is the fucking flyer. Here is the flyer that I was handed at the Seattle Anarchist Book Fair. I had multiple people give me this flyer at that event, and I immediately went back and put it on the internet, and it went viral, and Andy fucking knows it, and he refuses to credit me for my work because he does not want people to see my work. So I need you guys to do me a favor. I need you guys to do me a favor. If you are on Twitter, I need you to go to this link, and I need you to reply to him. And I would like you to tag him and call him out for not crediting my work. I would like you to retweet this. I would like you to reply to Andy directly. I would like you to tag him. I would like you to quote tweet him saying, Andy, why aren't you pointing out that Karlyn is the insider that went to the Seattle Anarchist Book Fair to get the flyer that caused this whole thing to begin with? Why are you not crediting independent journalists? He will not credit what he can't do. That is exactly right. If Andy Ngo was capable of going out and doing the journalism that I do almost every single fucking day, he would fucking be acting like it. He's not, because all he does is sit in his flat in London and do what I call a Twitter journalism, which is he reports on things that go viral on Twitter that other people do. And the only quote unquote original journalism that Andy Ngo does is journalism that he pays other people to do his research for him, and then he pretends he's the one doing it on the internet. So again, please go, please reply to him. Please tag me. This is how we fight the intellectually dishonest shills on the internet. We do it with facts, we do it with logic, and we expose them for the bullshit con artists that they are. I don't need to engage in smear campaigns like Andy Ngo engages with. I don't need to deflect. I don't need to pretend that I'm not doing this in order to maintain propriety or whatever the fuck. I will go right at his gay ass, and I will say, fuck you, motherfucker. Your work is nothing compared to mine. So if you guys want to do that, please go ahead and do that. Now, before we get into our first video, we do have a rules video for Socialism Saturday. For those of you who are new to Socialism Saturday, this is not like other streams on the internet. I'm going to ask you to abide by my rules. If you're going to be in my chat, please pay attention to this short rules video for Socialism Saturday so that we can all have a good time. All right, for anyone that's new, we have some rules for Socialism Saturday. Let me go over them real quick. Socialism Saturday is a research group and a class. We do take this seriously. You're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to have a drink or two. You're allowed to kind of kick back and joke in the chat. However, I need everyone to understand that when we are researching the radical revolutionary left, we do take this seriously. And so if you're shitposting in my chat, I'm going to tell you to stop. If you are posting off topic in the chat, I'm going to ask you to stop at some point because it's going to be distracting to what we're doing. I need you to think of yourself as in a classroom. And I'm not talking about an online classroom. I'm talking about a real life classroom, okay? When you walk into a real life classroom, I am the teacher, you are the students. You are sitting in the desk, I am sitting in the front of the classroom. I'm standing there teaching you what is going on. If you were in a real life classroom, you wouldn't walk in, start throwing shit at the wall, yelling, saying, I disagree with you because my best friend said something different. That's not allowed. I don't care about your feelings. I'm not going to coddle your opinion. And that's going to be the way it is. And if you don't like it, you don't have to be here. But if you are in my classroom, you will respect my rules and you will listen to me. And if you do not do that, then you will be removed. And how you feel about being removed makes no difference to me at all. The expectation is if you're going to be here and you're going to be watching socialism with us and you're going to be participating in the chat, you are doing it because you are serious about learning this topic and understanding this topic. The minute that I think that you're just fucking around or you're trolling or something like that, you're going to get put in a timeout or permanently banned, and that's just going to be the way it is. Rule number 2, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the chat. I can do whatever I want because I am the queen fascist bitch of my YouTube channel. So I can say and do whatever I want. But if you don't insult me and you don't insult other people in the chat, we're not going to have a problem. So be an adult, rein that shit in. Number 3, no whining. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care if you feel personally attacked. It makes no difference to me at all. And I promise you, I care about your feelings a little bit more than the left does. So if you can't handle me, you can't handle the left. If you start whining and complaining because you don't like the rules or you think you're being treated unfairly, you can just leave, bro. There's the door. You don't have to be here. Number 4, listen. Our job here and why we do Socialism Saturday is to listen to what the left is saying, to listen to what real leftists are doing in the real world. This is not to support your confirmation bias. This is not to support any conservative bullshit narrative that you may have heard on Glenn Beck that one time. This is not to be what you want it to be. This is to engage with reality. We need to listen, we need to actively listen, and we need to understand the left better than they understand themselves. That is the purpose of this exercise, okay? As part of that, I do ask that people refrain from debunking. You do not have a single debunk in your arsenal about the left is stupid because of reasons X, Y, B, and Z, or the left is terrible hypocrites for reasons X, Y, B, and Z. You don't have a single debunk that we haven't heard before, okay? And every time you put energy into debunking, that is energy that you're not putting into listening. So if I see you debunking, I'm going to tell you to stop, because you need to put that energy into listening instead. Lastly, break the rules of my chat or disrespect me in any way, and I'll just kick you out, and that's the way it is. All right, one's in the chat. If you agree to the rules of Socialism Saturday, the rules are really simple, guys. Number 1, don't be a dick. Do not insult me. Do not insult other people in the class. Number 2, no whining. I don't care about your feelings. I'm not going to coddle you. I do not care. So please just don't do it. That's it. Don't be a dick. No whining. Is if you do those things, we're going to get along just fine. Please make sure you mount the like button for me if you would be so kind. Mounting the like button lets more people know to come join us on the stream. I do appreciate everyone who's come out for us tonight. We are going to start by watching this lecture that took place at Washington State University about a week ago, The Radical Right Challenge to Liberal Democracy, with a guy named Matthew McManus. Matthew McManus wrote a book, The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism. Fascinating. Let's get this party started.
I'm Cornell Clayton. I'm director of the Foley Institute. And on behalf of the Institute, I want to welcome you out today. Let me remind you, this is part of our ongoing series on the future of liberal democracy. Our next event in that series will be in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, November 6th. We have Samuel Moyn from Yale coming out, and he'll be talking about liberalism's lost aspirations, which is really about what happened to liberalism during the Cold War. And also, to some extent, what happens once the Cold War is over. So it should be a very interesting talk as well. Today, we're fortunate to have with us Mac McManus, who's an assistant professor at Spelman College. He received his PhD from York University in Toronto. And before going to Spelman, he taught at the University of Michigan and also at Whitman College just down the street here, although he says he wasn't just down the street. That was during the pandemic, so he was online during it. Matt is a prolific author and has published over a dozen books, numerous articles in the major journals of political theory and social thought. Among his most recent works are The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism, which was published by Rutledge just last year, and then 2 other books that will be the subject of his remarks today: The Rise of Postmodern Conservatism, published by Palgrave Macmillan, and The Political Right and Equality, published by Rutledge in 2023. Join me now in welcoming Matt McManus to the Foley.
Postmodern conservatism. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's really great to be here. I'm actually quite jealous of all of you since I'm a big fan of Sam Moyn's work. So I wish I could be here for that talk. So I know that the most interesting part of all these discussions are the comments that are phrased as questions. So I'm going to be relatively quick. Although if I do speak too quickly, the way that my wife says that I do, please ensure to interrupt me. So my presentation is going to talk about the 2 prongs of my research, at least as it's been for the last couple of years. The first is going to cover the ascendancy of illiberal politics, mainly from an intellectual standpoint, since I'm a political theorist, it's what I do, and the threat that I see these liberal forces posing to democracy. And then the second is going to show how liberals, socialists, and liberals.
Well, this is actually a good question. So, and people who might like maybe you didn't go to college or something, maybe you have questions like this, and I don't want people to feel any shame in asking about that. Are these lectures for certain majors, or if you're just interested? Okay, so for people who don't know, not only did I spend a lot of time in college myself, but I actually worked in higher education for like 10 years. And so one of the things that we study is we look at research centers at colleges and universities. So sometimes people don't know that that in addition to teaching classes and having majors and stuff like that, there are also these research centers that exist at colleges and universities, and they could just be like the research center that's set up by a random faculty member and he's got a couple graduate students, but they do all of this crazy research and papers and stuff like that that they publish in journals. And this is where a lot of the crazy ideas come from. Okay, you get to go to college 15 years ago. Yeah, it's been a long time. So what we do is we go into these research centers, and this is something I pay particular attention to because no one pays attention to these research centers. Okay. So you have these centers that, and both of the talks we're going to watch tonight are at these research centers that basically they churn out whatever research they want to. There's no checks and balances on the research. They get some stupid grant that funds them, or they get some millionaire donor for the college to fund them, so they can run around doing whatever leftist bullshit they want. This then ends up getting put in like academic journals and things like that. And that's how all of this crazy leftist stuff trickles into all different parts of academia. I bring this up because the stuff that goes on in these research centers, like the Foley Institute, that's going to be a research center, like the Columbia Center for Critical Thought, that's a research center. These are open to anyone on campus. Anyone on campus can go to these, whether you're students, faculty, staff, whatever. So anyone can go to these talks. And of course, they archive them on YouTube later. They put them out on like the university intranet, stuff like that. Yeah, you might think of these as think tanks. That's a really good way to put it. So that's what we're listening to right now. This is not a formal class. This was just a lecture that happened on campus that everyone could go to.
Socialists can respond to this challenge. Once upon a time, this is a bit more of a theoretical project, but since it looks like Zoran Mamdani is going to be the mayor of New York, there's actually a little bit of practical resonance to it now, which is certainly nice from my political standpoint. So shameless plug for the books if you want to get them. So at the turn of the 20th century, intelligent commentators hypothesized that we'd reach the end of history in Francis Fukuyama's famous phrase. Now, Fukuyama was never quite the shill for neoliberalism that people took him to be. In fact, as he repeatedly likes to point out, he actually predicted in his book on the end of history that people like Donald Trump might decide to bring history back because they had this need for thymotic recognition. But certainly many intelligent commentators said the reality is that liberal capitalism had defeated its fascist enemies on the far right during the Second World War, and the communist enemies on the far left during the Cold War. And a lot of liberal intellectuals even like to conflate the two together, talking about how the open society had confronted various forms of closed societies, or collectivism had defeated, or individualism had defeated collectivism. You get the idea. This left liberal capitalism with no serious rivals left on the geopolitical scene, ensuring its ideological supremacy, as some thought, not just for the moment, but potentially forever. And even socialist and Marxist critics on the left seem to concede this. Slavoj Žižek, who some of you might know, in the 1990s, never tired of saying everyone had become a closet Fukuyamas, right? It didn't matter how many radical feminist critiques he wrote. Deep down, everyone kind of believed that liberal democracy was here to stay. There was no changing it. So it turned out that the end of history lasted about 25 years or so, right? So about the length of a couple of pop culture cycles. The end of history for many in the Western world. There are different people who periodized it. As a millennial, I usually like to point to 2008, when many of my peers saw our lives crashing down. But most people now seem to be dating it to 2016, which is the year the Brexit vote happened, as some of you remember. And of course, Donald Trump was elected to the most powerful office in the world for the first time, as it turns out. By 2018, many of the most powerful and notable countries in the world, the USA, India, Russia, Brazil, had illiberal leaders, self-described, and many other fellow travelers or notable states like Hungary, Poland, Britain, etc., all seem to also be moving in this direction. After Trump and Bolsonaro's defeats in 2020 and 2020.
Hang on, we got a super chat over on Rumble. Hit the CC button in the bottom right to turn the gear off. No, I can't, because that's the captions you're seeing in the video are the captions that they've manually put in the video. So I wish I could turn those captions off, but I can't. They're in the video, so we're just all gonna have to live with it.
Right, too. Some predicted that we'd weather the storm, that this turned out to just be a kind of weird blip on the radar, right? You know, one of my colleagues said it's almost like everyone had a night of heavy drinking, decided to just flirt a little bit with some light fascism, then woke up the next day and said, boy, that was a bad idea, never again, right? But it turned out we were just in the eye of the hurricane because we all know, of course, who's in office right now. So among these remarkable and disturbing developments has been the resurgence of host and transparently illiberal thinking on what Edmund Fawcett calls the hard right. For those of you who don't know Edmund Fawcett, he's a writer for The Economist, kind of a left liberal guy. This is from his really great book, Conservatism, The Fight for Tradition. He says it doesn't really even make sense to talk about the far right any longer. Instead, we should be talking about the hard right. And the reason for this, he says, is
the hard
talking about people
right
as being on the far right suggests that they're kind of beyond the Overton window, right? There are people like, say, Sam Francis back in the 1990s, right? They publish in obscure little journals agitating for things like white nationalism, but nobody serious pays attention to them. Well, now we have people like Stephen Miller in the White House, right? So clearly these are not far right groups any longer. They're hard right in the sense that they reject basic liberal norms, but are certainly in position to advance their own ideological agenda. So I'm going to very briefly talk about some of the anti-liberal and hard right intellectuals and authors that have appeared on the American, mostly American political spectrum.
Man.
And try.
One in the chat if you think we're going to get a Nick Fuentes mention. 2 in the chat if you think that Nick will not be mentioned. If this guy mentions Nick Fuentes, everyone has to drink, okay? That is the rule. I'm hoping for a Nick Fuentes mention. I am definitely hoping for a Nick mention. That would be pretty rad. We'll have to see. We will have to see. Got a super chat. Let's see. Hang on. Oh, no. The struggle over the Overton window is real. So true, Latrina. So true. All right. Everyone cross their fingers for Fuentes mention.
To describe their aspirations and their outlook. And I want to point out from the get-go, right? Many people have a pretty homologous understanding of right-wing thought. That includes a lot of leftists and Marxists, right? I would actually say that in many ways, the political right is a more diverse space than what you find amongst liberal and even left-wing circles. People there have a lot of different ideas, some quite strange about any number of different things. But what unites them all is their conviction, as the national conservative Yoram Hazony once put it in a tweet, that liberalism destroys everything. It is just a fundamentally corrosive force, and it needs to go. The way the Marvel movies are going.
Bro, he has no idea what he's
talking about. So beyond their conviction that liberalism rules everything, there are deep divides amongst right-wing intellectuals, movers and shakers about what it is that they want. And they're also tonally quite diverse, right? Anybody who goes online will know if you look at Patrick Deneen or Yoram Hazony and how they approach the world, it's very different than people like Raj, Nationalist, or Lomez, or Curtis Yarvin, right? Even though these all share conceptual.
Bronze Age pervert? How does anyone take the Bronze Age pervert stuff seriously? Like, P.S. I don't even I All right.
Space. By and large, Yoram Hazony, Deneen, and others aim for a more respectable kind of a liberal conservatism, and this is also associated typically with their politics. Hazony and Deneen will typically say they're not necessarily anti-democracy, they're just anti-liberal democracy, right? In fact, if anything, they think that a conservative form of democracy would be more democratic than its liberal alternative. They do all make clear, however, that an aristopopulism or anti-egalitarian national conservatism or post-liberalism needs to replace liberal elites, and that this aristopopulist elite will be far less concerned with using state power to advance hard right goals. And these groups have models to build off of. That's one of the important things to note as well, right? Policymakers like Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance, and the Heritage Foundation have all drank. I apologize. I knew that would happen. Have all drank deeply of these wells, and usually they point to soft authoritarian regimes like Hungary as a model to follow, right? Some others will point to Singapore, but you get the drift, right? Hungary is definitely the kind of paradigm that they like. So in her recent book for Princeton University Press, Furious Minds, Laura Field, who's the director of the Illiberalism Studies Institute, discusses the different factions of the hard right in considerable detail, running through how exactly.
What the fuck is the Illiberalism Studies Institute? Illiberalism Studies Institute. Oftentimes, guys, in these lectures, we find out about weird things that we never heard of before. Oh, did you guys know that George Washington University has an illiberalism studies program? For real. Look at this. George Washington University has an illiberal studies program. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Journal of Illiberalism Studies. This is like the weird rabbit hole of these odd research centers at university. Look at this. The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk and the New Apocalyptic Style in the United States. All right.
They reject liberal values. And if you haven't read that book yet, I really recommend you pick it up. It's probably the best guide to MAGA intellectuals out there.
Oh, yeah?
So just very briefly, national conservatives like Hazony endorse what he calls a conservative democracy, which is going to be a democracy where what he takes to be the dominant ethno-religious group or groups are entitled to use the state to impose a homogenizing and anti-egalitarian moral order. Very briefly, and this is from his book, Conservatism, A Rediscovery, and his other book, The Virtue of Nationalism. This includes restricting immigration, demanding conformity to the national and religious culture and its mores, emphatically rejecting international law, right? Hazony is absolutely insistent that international law doesn't really have much of any place in governing the affairs of the nation, and prioritizing at a moral level the needs of the ethno-religious group over a kind of commitment to cosmopolitan universalism of the sort that he sees as being central to to liberalism. Groups like LGBTQ individuals or religious minorities might be entitled to what he calls a carve-out from the expectation that they're going to conform to dominist religious mores. But what's really notable about this carve-out is it's not a matter of right. You know, if you're an LGBTQ person, you don't have a right to practice your lifestyle. If you're a religious minority, you don't have a right to practice your religion. It's entirely at the discretion of the dominant group. Right? They get to decide who gets these carve-outs and why. And notably, they're not going to be particularly expansive carve-outs. So what Gill calls the Claremonters, aka Michael Anton and Larry Arnn, are probably more marginal, but still significant intellectuals. And these figures tend to draw on right-wing versions of Straussianism to argue that American culture is now defined by a loss of manliness and the classical virtues that they associate with this.
Yep.
They often criticize society for an excessive effeminacy, losing touch.
Am I on glue, or does this guy sound a lot like James Lindsay? One in the chat if this guy is starting to sound a lot like James Lindsay. 2 in the chat if I'm crazy and I'm just making that up. Like, is it possible that James Lindsay is saying exactly the same thing as the guy that wrote the Politics of Liberal Socialism book? Is that possible? Wouldn't that be funny?
With traditional aspirations for greatness. And aligned with this, there's a deep concern about a lack of deference that people now pay to the intellectual and spiritual betters of society. So it's, again, a very kind of masculist ethos. And if you want a good example of this, I encourage you all to read Michael Anton's famous United 93 election. You all know what the United 93 flight was, right? Okay. Well, Anton basically calls 2016 a United 93 election because he says it's the last chance for conservatives to fight against this corrosive liberalism that he associated at that point with Hillary Clinton. And he said, yeah, Donald Trump is a flawed vehicle for enacting a virtuous set of policies. Go figure, right? But nonetheless, we kind of get behind that. Finally, there are the post-liberals who constitute the most diverse, and I have to say, intellectually astute group in the MAGA universe.
Oh, yeah?
And it includes academics like Patrick Deneen and Adrian Vilmule from Harvard Law. And by and large, these post-liberals are committed to a kind of right-wing Catholicism. I say right-wing Catholicism because there very much is a kind of left Catholic movement in this country that's important to distinguish them from. One could even make the claim that the Pope isn't exactly in line with the post-liberal program right now, right? By and large, the post-liberals overlap with the national conservatives perhaps most closely. But they tend to accept a more universalistic ethic than what national conservatives advocate for, which of course is intrinsic to their Catholicism, right? It's very hard to be a Catholic and say, we are entitled to prioritize the needs of the nation over the needs of all the rest of humanity. However, they do insist that the country needs to replace its liberal elite with a new conservative elite. And people like Deneen insist that they shouldn't be afraid to use the state to induce Christian virtue or respect for Christian virtue. And it's also worth noting that the post-liberals are quite notably willing to embrace a kind of counter-revolutionary rhetoric, right? The title of Deneen's last book was Regime Change, and that tells you a lot of what you want to know, right? They're not really in the business of conserving any longer because they feel that liberal democracy has left not much that's worth conserving any longer.
True.
So this is from Adrian Vermeulen at Harvard Law. His essay, All Human Conflict is Ultimately Theological. That'll give you a bit of a sense of the flavor of some of this post-liberal rhetoric and why it is that they hold liberalism in contempt. So he says that Schmidt and France.
Who the fuck is he talking about, and why have I never heard of these people before? Is there some rogue Harvard law professor that's saying that we need to abolish liberalism? He's basically saying, that there are these, okay, so this guy is talking about intellectuals and like think tanks on the right. So he's talking about like the Claremont Institute. He's talking about like Bronze Age pervert stuff, which I've never really paid attention to, like Bronze Age pervert and Raw Egg National and Curtis Yarvin. Like, and it's no shade, but it's just not my cup of tea. But like, right now, he's saying that there is a rogue Harvard law professor that's pushing like Catholic nationalism or something. I'm like, who? Like, who is this guy? I've never even heard of this guy.
And there are different registers. He's talking about Carl Schmitt there, the Nazi jurist. An author of political theology. In different registers suggest the problem I want to identify and discuss here. The relentless dynamic of liberalism tends to undermine the peace, security, and order that liberalism itself promises. What liberalism cannot obey are the natural principles, or if you like, natural laws of political rule that go under the label of ragion di Stato, principles and laws that no ruler can defy without undermining the very conditions of his rule. Minds more powerful than my own have argued that liberalism, in one way or another, undermines itself. The mechanisms proposed to this end are numerous and various. My project is to add one such mechanism whose claim to—
Hang on. I don't know who you are, but you've been ranting and raving in my chat about things that have nothing to do with any of it. Stop doing that. We are listening to a complicated lecture. I don't care about your ramblings about something that has nothing to do with what we're watching. We need to be paying attention to what is being said so that we can actually learn from it. So no random bullshit in the chat. If you keep spamming me, I'm going to ban you.
Consideration is that it captures the distinctive nature of sacramental liberalism, an essentially religious movement and set of commitments with a distinctive soteriology, eschatology, and ecclesiology. To the extent this mechanism has been overlooked, it is because earlier theorists were oblivious to the categories of constitutional and political theology, to the theological and liturgical dimensions of liberalism, and to Cardinal Maddening's dictum, all human conflict is ultimately theological. Okay. Now, this is a pretty hoity way of basically Vermeulen saying, the reality is that liberalism doesn't have any special claim to be more rational, let alone to have a better understanding of the world. People have made a theological choice for a liberal outlook in the United States for a very long time, but it's purely a choice. And he thinks, of course, we should make a different choice for a more Catholic integralist approach to not only policy, but also law, right? In his book, Common Good Constitutionalism, he gives us a bit of a look at what this would look like. And Vermeulen is more emphatic than Deneen in saying things like democracy is an instrumental good, not a necessary good, right? If people make the right choice for virtue, then their choices can be respected. If not, then there's no reason that a conservative court can't overturn democratic majorities if they move into a liberal direction. This is from Field's book. For those of you who are interested, I think I sent the slides to everyone. It's a really great kind of map of MAGA intellectuals and what they're doing. And again,
Chris DeMuth, Yorm Hazoni, Josh Hammer, Josh Holloway, or Holly, Chris Rufo, Victor. We've seen this. This got circulated on Twitter. Kevin Roberts, he's in the Heritage Foundation. Edmund Burke, First Things, Heritage Foundation. Post-liberals, JD Vance is on that. I don't recognize anyone else. Claire Monsters. So this is the Claremont Institute and Hillsdale College. And then hard right underbelly. Darren Beatty, Stephen Wolf, Curtis Yarvin, Constantine Bronjade Pervert, what the fuck? This is completely unhinged from what's actually influencing the right now. This is part of the reason I wanted to watch this. Excuse me. This is part of the reason I wanted to watch this because, like, I'm sorry. This is a map of people who work at think tanks who think that they are much more influential than they actually are. These people are not fucking influential on the right, but the left thinks they are because the left doesn't actually pay attention to the right any more than the right pays attention to the left. They have no fucking real clue what they're talking about. But guys, this is a lecture at a state-funded university. So they do actually believe that this is the right-wing ecosystem. Both sides know, yeah, this is the lesson we're learning. Both sides know nothing about the other side. Isn't that funny?
Cannot emphasize it enough. Go pick it up. Hopefully she'll send me a check for all the publicity. Unfortunately, I have to point out that the National Cons, Claremonters, and post-liberals are far from the most sinister stuff that the hard right has to offer, since these are the more mainstream intellectuals that now appear in the MAGA universe. What's been quite notable, certainly over the last 5 years or so, has been the rise of much more transparently anti-liberal, anti-democratic, and ultimately fascist kind of thinkers on the MAGA right. Many of these are influenced by authors of the German conservative revolution. This is a early 20th century movement of German intellectuals, including Schmidt, Junger, and Heidegger, all of whom essentially said the Weimar Republic is a corrupt, liberal, socialist institution.
Did this guy crib this lecture from James Lindsay, or did James Lindsay crib his stuff from this guy? This is actually the question I currently have. These are James Lindsay's talking points. This is literally James fucking Lindsay. So, did James steal his talking points from this guy's book? Or did this guy stumble upon James Lindsay and steal the talking points from him? Because this guy published a book with this stuff last year. I would bet you all the money in my fucking bank account that James Lindsay found this guy's book and James cribbed the talking points from this guy. The things we discover on Socialism Saturday. James is literally cribbing his fucking talking points from a communist college professor. Wow.
Far too friendly to things like feminism, and it needs to be undone, not by a return to the old imperial German system, but by a new movement from the right that's going to excite people in a way that previous conservatism wasn't able to. And not surprisingly, many of these authors either sympathized with fascism when it appeared or outright signed on to it.
Yeah, they sympathize with
there are a lot of different names for these intellectuals.
Fascist sympathizers.
Again, Field refers to this as the hard right underbelly of Magadom. You've also seen them referred to by me as the Nietzschean right, or people like Michael Lind have referred to them as the eugenicons because of their fascination with things like race eugenics, etc. So these authors and influencers include people, get ready because there are going to be some fun names here.
Good.
Like Tucker Carlson, not so much of a fun one, but Bronze Age perverts, Lomez, Rayek nationalist, who seems to be really gaining in preeminence. And once upon a time, Richard Hanania, although he seems to have moved pretty firmly into the liberal camp recently. All these are figures who openly endorse racist and eugenic ideas and are willing to transparently flirt with fascism. Not even, what a liberal would think fascism is, just outright fascism, right? In fact, Bronze Age Pervert in a 2021 essay said, I am a fascist or something worse, right? And the reason is he thought that fascism was too democratic for his taste, right? It still had this kind of populist, volkish quality to it, and that's not really palatable for someone like Costin, right? Then there are more overt authoritarians like Curtis Yarvin or Peter Thiel, who argue that essentially any concession with democracy was a mistake. Some of you might know Marvin Mencius Moldbug. He's been previewed very recently in the New Yorker, the New York Times, everywhere. His famous argument is that where normal conservatives are angry about the civil rights movement and real conservatives are angry at the French Revolution.
This is so unhinged from what's actually influential on the right now. It's crazy. I saw a video of you talking about respecting pronouns, yet you stream and support Tommy. Okay. So your opinion, person I don't know, but thank you for the money. Your opinion is that I should never stream people who I might disagree with their tactics. Is that so? Personally, yeah. If a person is just being a normal person and they want to be called something, I believe everyone is entitled to basic respect and courtesy. But like your opinion seems to be that I should only ever stream people that I agree with. Are you fucking retarded? Do you understand what we're doing right now? We are watching leftist socialists on college campus. Do you think I agree with what the person I'm streaming is actually saying and doing? No, that would be stupid. So if I want to stream Tommy, I will stream Tommy, and Tommy will sometimes say things that I agree with, and Tommy will sometimes say things that I disagree with. I don't agree with all of Tommy's tactics, but I'm not going to stop streaming him just because you have feelings that are being offended for some fucking reason. My God.
Yarvin is still angry about the English Civil Wars, right? He thinks that was a mistake, right? We need to go back to Robert Filmer and all those figures. Teal, as some of you might know, is a multi-billionaire who's
Okay, let's be clear. I'm going to take your money. You don't tell me how to run my fucking chat. I will absolutely take your money. You, like, who the fuck even are you? Let's see. What's your channel history? You've never been on my channel before, and now you're super chatting in, telling me how to run my chat? Fuck right off. Go fuck yourself. If you want to keep giving me money, that's fine. But seriously, fuck off. Gothic, thank you for the super chat. I almost prefer the 4-hour manosphere infiltration you covered earlier this year about talking about the right. It was insane. Drink some tea. You know what? That's why I have my big mug right here. Don't worry about it. I got my big mug of, well, it's coffee. It's not tea. It is coffee. But, like, whatever. It's still warm, okay?
Financed an enormous number of these figures. Probably the most notable work of his is I believe it was a 2009, might be 2008 essay, The Education of a Libertarian, where he says, I've come to realize from a libertarian, quote unquote, perspective that democracy was in stake because too many poor people and women, especially, have been allowed to participate in politics. And poor people and women, by and large, tend to vote for Barack Obama or people like him. This is a violation of liberty.
I'm a hypocrite.
So we need to...
I'm a hypocrite. Oh, no, you just got permanently banned. Thanks for the money. Bye. Bye.
Undo that, right? So much worse for democracy. And again, once upon a time, it'd be pretty easy to dismiss these people the way that someone like, say, for Sam Francis, for those of you who know, was dismissed. But they've had a huge influence on J.D. Vance, who's kind of at the nexus of a lot of these streams of thought. Chris Rufo, Josh Hawley, all of these figures have flirted with the kind of masculist, ethno-chauvinist, so-called counter-revolutionary rhetoric that these figures offer, right? I'm not moving too fast, am I?
Yes.
I'll try to go a little slower still. So this is a pretty grim picture of the post-liberal future that these figures want for us, at least for those of us who are committed or remain committed to the principles of liberty, equality, and solidarity for all. My contention in the more constructive program of my work is that many liberals have failed to reflect very deeply on what has led us to this point, which would require bluntly acknowledging that the forms of neoliberal hegemony that were dominant in liberal circles at the turn of the century largely deserve to fail, right? My kind of pithy statement is that neoliberalism was uninspired in theory and has proven largely a failure in practice, producing societies characterized by intense inequalities of wealth and opportunities. And these intense inequalities of wealth and opportunities come to be aligned with inequities of economic and political power that serve to delegitimate liberal democracy in the minds of many citizens for very good reasons, right? To paraphrase Alistair McIntyre in his last book, Ethics and the Conflicts of Modernity, this is an outcome somebody like Marx would have predicted and warned us against had we not had to learn the lessons he had to teach again and again. So just to kind of give you a sense of the flavor of some of this, to kind of back up what I'm saying, it's not just speculative. Empirical studies by conservative social scientists like Eatwell and Goodwill stated that...
Hang on, we got a super chat from Andre. There's a long list on those communist walls to overthrow capitalism and U.S. government. No wonder the right wing doesn't know the far left has lists of them. They don't pay attention. Yeah, the left doesn't pay attention to the right, and the right doesn't pay attention to the left. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? Fizzle! Thanks for the super chat. I just joined the stream, and that chat earlier that was shown is accurate. JD Vance is good friends with Curtis Yarvin and Patrick. Yeah, that is actually true. You're 100% right about that. I've been watching NatCons for a while now. Fizzled, I would love your opinion on things that's being mentioned in this essay. I don't pay as much attention to this whole sphere as I do other places just because I don't actually think they're that relevant. I think they're a bunch of pompous, arrogant douchebags who like to hear themselves talk. But if you guys are paying attention to like the Bronze Age pervert stuff or like any of that, let us know in the chat what you think about what this commie college professor is saying, because I would love to have your input.
One of the reasons why people embraced right-wing populist movements was the perception that liberal and especially neoliberal elites were out of touch, cosmopolitan, and concerned with the interests of the rich rather than the interests of ordinary citizens. And the sad truth is that further studies by people like Thomas Piketty or moderate liberals like Gillen's all demonstrate that this perception is correct, right? By any metric, ordinary citizens have had very little say in the laws that govern them, certainly in the United States for a very long time, right? Gillen's in particular, in Affluence and Influence, is particularly ruthless, right? Where he says, it'd be very hard to call America a democracy post-1980. It's far better to call it a plutocracy, because even though people were allowed to vote, didn't really matter which party was in power. People who got their way.
To be really clear, James O'Keefe burned down Project Veritas and tried to destroy everyone in it because James O'Keefe monumentally mismanaged the finances of Project Veritas, and he fucked everyone in that company over, and he fucked over a lot of great undercover journalists, and James O'Keefe is a massive fucking narcissist, and we do not, but you guys can do whatever you want. I will never support James O'Keefe. I know a lot of people who used to work at Project Veritas. I am friends with people who used to work at Project Veritas. I was working with Project Veritas undercover journalists, like on other things when that whole thing happened. I documented like explicitly what happened with James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. James O'Keefe is not someone to be trusted. I understand that a lot of people on the right are entertained by James O'Keefe, but James O'Keefe is a massive fucking narcissist that fucked over a lot of really good people. He fucked over people who have exposed some of the biggest stories that you've ever heard of that you don't know the names of. I am personally fucking offended at what James O'Keefe did to those people. And I'll tell you this too. James O'Keefe tried to steal my journalism from me, and I didn't let him have it because I knew the backstory for all of this. It is a shame. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And I documented it all on my Substack when it happened. You can go and look back at the Substack. There are 2 major articles on it that I talked to over 24 people who were actually involved in Project Veritas that told me what happened at the time. So James O'Keefe can quite literally go fuck himself, honestly. Yo, $50 super chat from a dude over on Rumble. Thank you, Karlyn, for everything you do. Thank you, Adune, for that very generous super chat. I really do appreciate it.
The rich, almost every time. Whether Barack Obama was in power, George Bush, you name it. Those are the policies that were advanced. Okay? So this perception that liberal political elites and institutions are unresponsive to the needs of ordinary citizens obviously plays an enormous role in delegitimating liberal democracy. And I would also add, and this is where my work on postmodern conservatism comes in, plays a role in inducing an attitude of cynicism towards politics that really opens the ground for someone like Donald Trump to gain a lot of power and influence. Because Trump, as dishonest as he is often very plausible when he calls out corruption or says everything I've done, they've done as well, right? I'm just a lot more transparent and a lot more transactional about that, right? People, by and large, tend to prefer an honest bullshitter over someone who pretends to be above all that, and then actually was just going to call up the plutocrats and say, we're going to give you whatever it is that you want. Right?
Yeah, that's actually
so. In his book, Liberalism Against Itself, Samuel Moyn, who's been an enormous influence on my work, which again is why I'm very jealous I'm not going to be here to say hi to him next week. He stresses how this was not by accident, but by design. Right? Cold War neoliberals, as he refers to them, largely turned away from the early aspirations of liberalism to secure societies of liberty, equality, and solidarity for all, not just for the wealthy, and embraced instead a liberalism that was characterized by enormous amounts of caution and fear, including fears of socialism, certainly, but also excess democracy. right? There was a concern that the swinish multitude, if they were given too much of a say in how they were governed, might be potentially dangerous in terms of their attitudes towards things like private property, who actually calls the shots, that kind of thing. We can't have that, right?
Private property.
And Moyne points out that the irony is that this kind of conservative or a cautious crouch that liberals took ended up being perhaps the least sensible thing that they could have ended up doing, because it delegitimated liberal democracy in the eyes of a lot of people. And at the close of his great book, Moyne warns that if liberals don't find a way to restore a sense of hope, it's unlikely that we're going to see our creed survive into the 21st century. And in my favorite phrase of his, he says, the reality is also survival isn't good enough, right? You don't just want to have people like Joe Biden elected into office to sputter out a couple of years, only for right-wing populists to come in immediately afterwards, because people think, well, nothing really fundamental has changed, right? Same old with the Democratic Party. So this is where I come to my more recent book, right? In my book, The Political Theory of Liberal Socialism, I draw on Moyne, C.B. Macpherson, John Stuart Mill, and John Rawls, and a variety of others, to argue for retrieving a tradition of liberal socialist thought that I argue can provide a sense of hope in these difficult times. Now, I always like to joke that when I announced that I was going to be writing this book, I very briefly united libertarians and Marxists on the internet together and saying, that's a ridiculous idea, get out of here. Right?
Yep, because it's not
completely
real.
Oxymoronic, right? And one of the reasons why I think this is true is that for many who've been weaned on Cold War liberalism, the idea of anything like liberal socialism might very well seem like an oxymoron, right? It's just never going to happen, right?
So I just want to point this out. He just said, and this is mostly for people who are newer, he just said, when I produced a book calling for liberal socialism, I was laughed off the internet by actual socialists and libertarians. Now, libertarians, we're going to put them aside for a second. We're too worried about them. But I really want to make sure people understand. Communists and socialists do not like liberals. They bitch and complain more about liberals than they do about conservatives, and it's not even close. So the reason this guy drew a backlash is because he called his book Liberal Socialism, which is not a real thing, and he pissed off the actual socialists and communists who are like, fuck you, asshole. We even heard this from Chandler on the interview the other day. Chandler was like, I don't like liberals, I don't like Democrats, I don't like Republicans, I don't like any of these people. That's generally the feeling on the far left, is they do not support liberalism in any way, shape, or form.
But as I point out, it's really telling that the two most significant liberal philosophers, not of one but 2 centuries, Mill and Rawls, both argued for a form of liberal socialism or were extremely sympathetic towards it. Mill famously said that socialists were the more far-sighted successors of liberalism, and more or less intended to do this.
Hang on. We got a super chat from Kevin. Sorry if you've already covered this before, but do these people only teach college kids? Well, this guy is a college professor and he's lecturing at another college right now. So yes, so far as I understand, the person we're watching specifically is a college professor. Or do they try to reach adults? Seems like they're trying to get kids before they get out into the real world. So, I mean, listen, there are all sorts of if you go to a socialist bookstore or any sort of far left space, you will find a lot of educational opportunities for anyone, and they don't have to be college students. So socialist bookstores and communist groups will host book clubs or educational lectures or just discussion groups or whatever, and anyone can attend those. Those are for general people in the community. So do they try to reach out to just normal adults? Yes, but we are currently watching a college professor. So, of course, college professors are going to be more focused on teaching college students, but that's not to say that there aren't other opportunities for adults to be able to, learn this information if they want to. It's probably just not going to be through the college, because that's going to be specifically for college professor. You just got 3 shirts. Well, make sure when you get your shirts, you send me a picture of them. I would love to see them. Thank you so much for buying my merch. I really appreciate it. Sounds like James Lindsay likes to make up words. Well, I mean, college professors like to make up words too. That's not restricted to just one person.
Same thing, just in the life of poor people, right? And Rawls said something very similar. And I think that there's really something to this, in the sense that both liberalism and socialism share a lot more in common with one another than they ever have with the right. And I'm not talking about the liberal right, I mean the real right, the kind of people that I'm talking about before, in the sense of being mature Enlightenment doctrines, by and large committed to the idea that liberty, equality, and solidarity for all are the right principles for a society. So in my book, and if you're going to the grad seminar also afterwards, I go into this in a lot more detail, a lot more boring detail, really. I argue liberal socialists are committed to 3 core principles, although naturally these are all understood very differently by all the people I talk about in my book. Right? So I talk about Tom Paine, Mary Wollstonecraft, Chantal Mouffe, a whole lot of them. Right? They all understand this differently. So I argue the first principle is a commitment to methodological collectivism and normative individualism. The second principle is a commitment to a developmental rather than acquisitive ethic. And then the third, and here's some really fun Rawlsian language for you. Liberal socialists are committed to a basic social structure with highly participatory, liberal, democratic political institutions and protection for liberal rights. What's notable, though, is that liberal socialists call for the extension of liberal and democratic principles into the workplace and the economy. And certainly all feminist liberal socialists, which quite a lot of them, would also say these principles need to be extended to the family as well. Right?
Yeah,
Notably somebody like
individualism,
Lou Farmel, very, very prominent feminists. So we'll go through this very quickly. In the book, I argue that liberal socialists are methodological collectivists and normative individualists, which is not a point original to me. I shamelessly steal it from Tony Smith in his great book, Beyond Liberal Egalitarianism. What Smith points out is that liberal egalitarians, as they call them, and I would say liberal socialists fall into this, accept the need to understand human beings as social animals who can only flourish when they are embedded in the right communal practices and the right institutions. And this is a point that goes all the way back to Aristotle, right? Man is a social animal. Anyone who is not a social animal is either a beast or a god, right? I don't do too many gods, or at least haven't met too many in my time, right? However, liberal socialists are normative individualists in the sense that they think it is the concrete well-being of individuals, future generations, and potentially non-human animals, which are of moral concern. Or if you want to use Derek Parfit's term, they're what matters from a moral point of view. Why is this important? Because all liberal socialists would say reified abstractions or imagined communities like the nation or the people or the faith, it's not that they're unimportant, right? Just because they're kind of imagined communities doesn't mean they're insignificant, but they're only of derivative moral concern, which means you can't prioritize the needs of the nation over the needs of the actual people who make it up. Certainly not the minorities.
Okay, so what he's saying here is that, so first off, I think that actual socialists would reject the idea of normative individualism on its face because they do not believe that the individual should take priority over the collective. But the argument that he's making here is, and please correct me if you think if you have different ideas about this. The argument that he's making is an anti-nationalist argument because he's saying the nation as a whole should not be prioritized over the needs of the individuals. So he's basically saying, it's like a roundabout way of saying like power to the people. In some ways, it's like saying the people, like the needs of the people should take priority over the needs of the nation. So it's an anti-nationalist argument. Please tell me if you think I'm wrong about that, but that's my interpretation of this.
That make it up. So secondly, liberal socialists reject what McPherson calls the possessive individualist ethic that holds that human beings should be understood as atomized competitive animals who are primarily motivated by the gratification of their hedonic desires, right? Basically, we're all in competition with one another to get as much stuff as possible for as long as possible. And then we die and we hope that our children will be able to do the same. That's kind of McPherson's telling, right? Now, McPherson points out, obviously this is accurate to an extent, right? All you need to do is spend any time, looking at people tweet about, from Wall Street, and you'll know that there are definitely hyper-competitive, hyper-acquisitive people out there, right? But this misses, according to liberal socialists, the different and richer ways in which flourishing and happiness are achieved. So liberal socialists, by and large, reject an acquisitive ethic that holds that acquiring material goods and using them to gratify desires is the basis of flourishing.
Hang on. I know, and Deborah, you're not the only person doing this, but I'm going to use you as an example. Please don't take offense. We don't debunk on Socialism Saturday. And I said this in the rules at the beginning of the stream, but I want to explain why. And you're not in trouble or anything, but I want to use this as an example. This is what a lot of people that are new to Socialism Saturday do. You're listening to debunk things rather than listening to understand the perspective. The reason we don't debunk things is that it doesn't fucking matter. He can't hear you. His audience can't hear you. You debunking things in the chat is not going to make any difference at all. We are listening to understand what they believe. Just because you listen to understand what someone believes does not mean you have to agree with them. But if all you're ever doing is debunking what another person is saying, you are not actually going to understand what they believe. So I want to encourage you not to do this. It doesn't make a difference. It changes nothing. So please listen to understand rather than listening to debunk, and you're going to learn a whole lot more. Let's see, I got a $10 Rumble. Guys, by the way, Rumble is kicking YouTube's ass tonight in terms of super chats. I just want to point this out. Rumble is kicking your ass, YouTube. What's going on? So Goro over on Rumble says, thank you for the work you do. A lot of LGBTQ history makes sense after seeing your work and understanding the topic. Yeah, if you listen to that Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture, you will understand the queer stuff on a whole new level. I really do appreciate that super chat.
For one that stresses the development and exercise of our higher capacities, especially the highest kinds of capacities, and they suggest that is what is of enduring ethical value. And a good example of this would be John Stuart Mill, right? Mill famously said, it's wrong to understand human beings as basically just little pigs waiting to be satisfied, right? We're much more like living trees that want to grow and extend ourselves on all ends. And in order to grow and extend ourselves on all ends as living trees, we need to have our fundamental capacities developed to the extent possible. And Mill also notably said this will require other people as well, right? We can't become fully rounded without forming beneficial relations with others. And I point out in my book, this is not fundamentally different from what Marx understood good society to be as well, right? In Capital Volume 3, Marx famously said, the goal of socialism should be a society where the end of social policy is the development of human powers as a goal in and of itself. So then finally, I say liberal socialists argue that a just basic structure is one with highly participatory liberal democratic institutions and strong protection for liberal rights. Okay. Now, notably, the kind of socialist element of this is that basic rights do not include a right to expansive ownership of the means of production, or what Will Edmondson calls the commanding heights of the economy. Okay? But Rawls would point out that any kind of good liberal socialist society would need to emulate the Nordic states in providing strong protections for personal property. And this is where you get into some tricky empirical questions, where people say, well, what's the difference between private ownership of the means of production and ownership of personal property? And I don't really think that there's a good theoretical way of settling it. I think that this is a penumbral case that has to be settled in also part by examining it on a one-by-one basis, right? But basically, if you run a small business, I don't think that anyone has a problem with that. If you own a massive business and you don't want to let your workers unionize, that's a bigger problem, right? So liberal socialists also argue that certainly in the larger forms of economic life, liberal rights need to be extended organically into the economy and the family to protect against domination and subordination. So a very good book on this recently is by Liz Anderson at the University of Michigan in her book, Private Government. And just very briefly, she says, if you were to tell the average American, from now on, the government is going to tell you when you can go to the bathroom, when you're going to wake up, what you're going to say, who you're going to be friends with, what you're going to wear, there'd probably be a revolution tomorrow, right? Everybody would be saying, don't tread on me. There'd be another Boston Tea Party. You get the idea. But we're all very comfortable if people in the workplace or our bosses tell us to do exactly the same things.
Well,
and what Anderson points out is most of us will probably spend 33 to 35 years of our life at work, right? And then when you take into account that we all have to sleep sometime, right? Actually, in many ways, our place of work has a far bigger impact on the structure of our life than our relation to the state. And she points out, consequently, why wouldn't we want to extend things like rights to freedom of assembly, rights to freedom of expression, a certain amount of democracy into the workplace, given the impact that it has on us, right? So usually this is understood to entail at a broader level a commitment to a kind of market socialism, where workers would, by and large, own the means of production alongside some forms of nationalized industry. And of course, it'd be accompanied by an expansively redistributive welfare state. Okay? And I usually point to the Nordic model as something that's worth emulating here. I went on tour with Pelle Dragstad, who wrote a good book called Nordic Socialism, if you're interested, talking about the Danish experience with just these kinds of approaches. And Denmark, I just saw, had the second highest quality of life in the world, right? So they must be doing something right. So just to give an example of who I'm talking about, John Stuart Mill, right? John Stuart Mill is most famous for his stirring defense of personal freedom and on liberty. And I would add, since this is often forgotten and it shouldn't be, his all equally stirring defense of women's equality and the subjection of women, deeply inspired by his relationship with his wife, Harriet Taylor Mill, I should say, right, with whom he had nothing but praise. So Mill held that the goal of life should be to ensure individuals are free and capable to develop their individual personality, once again, like a living tree that must evolve and grow to its natural extent. Less well known is the fact that Mill, alongside his wife Harriet Taylor, came to identify him with a form of cooperativist and market socialism, and even overtly identified as a socialist in his mature period when he wrote his greatest works. And this has produced some very interesting books in recent years for those of you who like the literature. Probably the best book on this subject is by Helen McCabe at the University of Nottingham, John Stuart Mill, Socialist. And there's also Liz Anderson's recent book, Hijacked, about the neoliberal work ethic and why Mill would have hated it. Worth looking at also. So this is from Mill's autobiography, where he kind of gives an account of his transition. He says, our ideal of ultimate improvement went far beyond democracy and would class us decidedly under the general designation of socialists. While we repudiated with the greatest energy that tyranny of society over the individual, which most socialistic systems are supposed to involve, we yet look forward to a time when society will no longer be divided into the idle and industrious, when the rule that they who do not work shall not eat will be applied not to paupers only, but impartially to all, when the division of the produce of labor, instead of depending, as in so great a degree it now does, on the acts of a divert, will be made by concert on an acknowledged principle of justice, and when it will no longer either be or be thought to be impossible for human beings to exert themselves strenuously in procuring benefits which are not exclusively their own, but to be shared with the society they belong to, which is a classic Mill run-on sentence, right? But it's the first part that I really wanted you to pay attention to. So Mill's socialism rejected the kind of economic centralism and authoritarianism that he already foresaw might be practiced in something like the command economies. But he argued, certainly in the later editions of Principles of Political Economy, that capitalists were an indulgence that an efficient economy just really couldn't afford. He said, by and large, they produce a little bit of technical know-how and how to run their firms, but this is nothing that workers, he thought, couldn't actually do for themselves and probably actually do better. In addition to this, Mill said he thought that workplace democracy would be morally uplifting from a liberal standpoint, and for good reasons, right? He said, look, liberals came into the world committed to this idea that there should be no kings, as the phrase goes, that aristocracy was a bad thing, precisely because it induces this attitude of bowing and scraping towards one's betters. And Mill said, there's no reason why we shouldn't extend precisely these same liberal principles into the workplace, because that's what a lot of workers right now are experiencing when they go to work, right? They have to bow and scrape towards their bosses in a way that is morally demeaning. And he thought that governing things for themselves would be uplifting. Okay? So he argued for worker-managed firms where laborers would elect managers to run things and could be recalled. And he argued that profit would be widely shared. This would be accompanied by a widespread redistribution of wealth by the state, ensuring health, education, alleviation for the poor, and more besides. Here, I'm just going to say, read Helen's book. It's really good. And she's a very nice person, too. So if you email her, I'm sure she'd be happy to let you know about that. So my book is largely a retrieval of liberal socialism, which is a fancy academic term to say I don't kind of offer my own arguments for it that expansively, although I do offer some criticisms of the tradition as it stands right now. Although I'm shamelessly willing to say this, I am pitching a new book that'll try to offer my own account of this, right? But I do think that liberal socialism embodies an ideal whose time has come, or at least it's something that we should consider, because it does offer a genuine hope for a better future, free of domination in politics and in the economy, while retaining and in fact deepening in many respects our commitments to core liberal values. And I would also add, from a political theoretical perspective, a lot of extremely exciting work is being done in this vein in the field of liberal theory right now. So it's not just me, right? I already mentioned Elizabeth Anderson's work, which is really pioneering in this regard, particularly her most recent two books. You can look at people like...
So for people who are new, this is a common thing that people who have never watched the left before say. They say they're reading a script, they're reading their slides. Guys, most of the time when you're going to be giving a talk to a group of people, you are either going to be reading a script or you're going to be reading slides. That does not mean these are not their ideas. That does not mean they're being handed a script that they have to say. This is just, if you've never given a talk, and I've given many of them, like if you don't script out a talk before you give it, like your talk is going to fucking suck. So of course he's reading his slides. Of course they're reading a script. Like they're preparing to give a lecture at a university. So
Moyne or McCabe or Igor Shuketbrod, or Dan Chandler from the London School of Economics, who published a recent best-selling defense of what he calls a left Rawlsian vision, right? Where he also kind of makes very similar arguments to what I'm doing. So I argue liberal socialism is not a monolith. There are a lot of different variations and flavors that it comes in, some of which might be more to some people's taste than others, but it does offer a genuine vision for a future of economic democracy and an end to plutocracy and oligarchy, which is very much in line with the revolutionary goals that liberals held to when they first entered into the world, which was, of course, to create a society committed to liberty, equality, and solidarity for all. And I am not yet ready to sacrifice the aspiration to achieve these principles to the right, which I think is fundamentally committed to a very different set of values, namely what Hayek described in the Constitution of Liberty, which is that the right is committed to this idea that there are recognizable superiors in society, and the best thing for everybody is for us to bow and scrape to our recognizable superiors. I don't think that that's a social vision that I want to see implemented, and I think that liberal socialism is one of the things that can inoculate us against. Thank you.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes for some Q&A.
Q&A is the best part.
Yeah, I like the jacket, so.
So I had a question. It was kind of in the first half of your lecture regarding the hard right and their stance on, I may have misinterpreted it, but their stance on society should be organized behind certain social groups of, like you mentioned, it's kind of a more conservative Catholicism and something like that, and that might end up cutting off other minority groups. Then you mentioned that those same groups also advocated that post-1980 United States is no longer a democracy as a result. Isn't that kind of hypocritical, saying that, well, these rich elites are in charge, but we don't want them to be, so we want our rich elites to be in charge?
Well, quite a few people have pointed that out about Deneen's book, and his response has by and large been, yeah, but we'll be better elites, right? You know, they're genuinely committed to what ordinary people want, as opposed to the neoliberal elites at their fancy universities who are just.
But isn't that what the current elites said 40 years ago?
Sure, right? And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I posit that what we should be doing is moving away from a society that is so oriented by elitism of any sort, right? Precisely because I don't really think there's that much of a transition. But this is a good point for me to kind of talk a little bit more about this, right? So there's been a lot of research done recently into the nature of right-wing thought, right? And certainly when I was growing up, the kind of version of right-wing thought that was largely considered to be canonical was kind of moderate.
Pop quiz for the chat. Pop quiz for the chat. Was the no one in the chat if you think the No Kings protest was a Democrat, liberal, progressive protest? 2 in the chat if you think the No Kings protest was a socialist or communist protest. 1 in the chat if you think No Kings is a Democrat, liberal, progressive protest. 2 in the chat if you think that No Kings was a communist or socialist protest. Everyone who said 1 has got it correct. The No Kings protest was not far left. The No Kings protest was not communist. The No Kings protest was not socialist. Were there communist and socialist groups involved? Yup. Most of the communist and socialist groups that were involved in any way, in any official capacity with the No Kings group are not relevant on the far left. So, for example, people made a big deal about the fact that the Communist Party CPUSA was involved with the No Kings protest. Guys, CPUSA is almost irrelevant on the far left. And the reason they're almost irrelevant on the far left is they kicked out all their members after the leader of CPUSA demanded people vote for Kamala Harris, and people in the party didn't want to vote for Kamala Harris. And so they kicked out everyone in the party that wanted to vote for, that did not want to vote for Kamala Harris. So CPUSA is almost entirely irrelevant. There were other like groups that were on some signs, but again, it's like there was no real relevant far left group involved in any official capacity with the organization of the No Kings protest. Now, did some far left groups show up and hand out flyers? Of course they did. Because the far left groups were trying to take advantage of the situation in order to recruit and radicalize more people to their cause. Nope, the RevComs are a completely different group, and the RevComs are not relevant on the far left. The RevComs are a very culty group. The RevComs are not the same as CPUSA. The RevComs, again, have almost no relevance on the real far left, and the RevComs were not involved in any official capacity with the No Kings organizing. So, that's not what we're talking. We're not talking about the No Kings protest tonight.
Burkean conservatism of the sort that you would associate with somebody like George Will, for example, in his book.
Well, no, no. Stop fucking cherry picking evidence right now. Like, conservatives do this all the time. They see one old person in a room. They're like, everyone is an old white liberal. This guy is literally answering the question of a college student right now. The very first person to ask a question in the lecture is a college student. So why are you cherry picking that you saw this is at a college? Of course there's going to be older people in the lecture. There's going to be faculty members in the lecture. Of course there are. The very first person asking a question is a college student. So why are you cherry picking data? We don't cherry pick data based on the approved conservative bullshit narrative, guys. We look at the whole picture. We don't do the conservative clickbait bullshit that's popular on Twitter. It's just all old white people. Well, actually, no, it's actually really not. It's actually not.
The conservative sensibility, which is to say that, to be a conservative or to be on the right is to endorse prudence, deference to the way things have been done before, and to not want to shake things up in too radical a way, right? It was a slow, cautious steering of the ship. And I want to acknowledge that it very much is part of the right. And I actually think there are some virtues to things like Burkean conservatism. I don't think change for its own sake is a good thing. But I don't think that really captures the essence of what being on the right is. I tend to agree with Hayek that being on the right means being committed to this idea that there are recognizably superior people in society, or recognizably superior groups. And these recognizably superior groups are entitled to more of everything, really. More agency, more power, more political influence, certainly more cultural influence, more money, you pick it, right? And if you look at the history of right-wing thought, what becomes very clear is they have different ideas about who is a natural superior, right? The white nationalists have their kind of candidate for who it is, which is anybody with the right skin pigmentation. Different religious nationalists think that Christianity, a certain form of Christianity at least, should be morally elevated over others. Various forms of right-wing libertarianism, as distinguished from, say, bleeding heart libertarianism, think that the Randian capitalists are all little John Galts, and the rest of us are just parasitic takers that want to appropriate from those who've done everything, right? But that's kind of the essence of what they're all committed to, this idea of recognizable superiority. And once one understands this, something like conservative revolutionary theory becomes a lot more easy to understand. So think about somebody like Ronald Reagan or Margaret Thatcher, right? Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher are very difficult to interpret as figures who are really committed to small c conservatism, right? Reagan used to like to say that Paine was right, that we have it in our power to make the world anew. Doesn't really sound all that conservative, and that's because he really wanted to repudiate the legacy of an excessive form of the New Deal.
Hang on. Do colleges today teach the history of the United States and our political policies, or just socialism, communism, and Marxism? Most liberal arts colleges are filled with far left college professors. It's not that they don't teach any history. Oh shit. I just fucked up my knitting. Can you guys believe that? I just fucked up my knitting. God fucking damn it. Well, whatever. Okay, I just have to go back and fix it. But okay, so back to this question as I prepare to fix my knitting. It's not as though colleges don't teach any, like, what you might call like real history, right? They do, but it's always from the perspective of the far left, because the people teaching the history are far leftists. Oh wait, no, I didn't fuck up my knitting. I got it right. Never mind. I was right. Didn't fuck up my knitting at all. So, but you gotta understand, it's like most of the liberal arts professors working in colleges today, they're communists, they're socialists. And so everything they do is always going to be from that lens. And by the way, they've never known anything different from it. They've never, like, this is how they were taught by their college professors. These are the social systems that they're interacting with. So it's like, for them, there is no other way to see the world. It's not necessarily that they're being evil. I don't like characterizing these people as evil because these people have been indoctrinated into a cult. Okay? Far left is a cult. College professors today learned from people in the cult when they were in college. They were indoctrinated into the cult. So now they're teaching and indoctrinating new people into the cult, but they don't even realize that they're in a cult. So I want to make sure that that's clear. It's not a nefarious action. It's just they're teaching what they know. I hope that makes sense.
And the civil rights movement. Margaret Thatcher used to say that she wanted to change the soul of the nation, right? And economics was just the means, not the end, right? And it's very hard to associate changing the soul of the nation with conservatism, right? Saying that things are just fine, we're going to carry on and keep calm, right? And I think that what we're seeing now is just a more radicalized version of this project, right? There was a good essay that came out by Glenn Elmers back in 2021. Conservatism is no longer enough, that captures this very well, where he says the reality is there's nothing left to conserve that's worth conserving in this country. Real Americans, by which he means people on the right, aren't in charge any longer. And so we need to get on board with this idea that we're going to launch a counter-revolution and fundamentally change the country. Right? And looking at the history of right-wing thought, that's just really not that surprising. Yeah. Oh, a zigzag.
So a lot of sympathy for what you're proposing at the end, but I am going to attack this from a left perspective. I'm sure you've probably heard this before. I'm going to try and not be annoying about it. So talking about liberal socialism, it seems like
so let's just hang on.
The problem here is
hang on. Before this, there's a communist in the back that's about to attack him. Let's just look. Young person, 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 young, 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 young. 2/3 of this room in this image is made up of young people. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 young people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 old people. So again, this is why we don't cherry pick evidence. For the person who said, there's a whole bunch of old people there. There's some old people there. The majority of the people, at least in this angle that we can see, are young people. So this is not an example of like, oh, look at all these old liberals and this is just all old people and blah, 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 blah. This is why we look at the whole picture. We don't just look at one. If this room was cropped to only include these people right here, you would say, if this room was cropped so like you only got like half of this video, you would say that's a room filled with old people. No, it's not. Just objectively speaking, it's just not. So we don't fucking cherry pick evidence. Oh, you're here? What are we watching? And can I be... honey, you can be as racist as you want. In fact, Amalek, I want to encourage you to... Like, guys, Amalek's been feeling a little depressed lately. And I feel like we need to give Amalek an opportunity to cheer himself up. We need to let Amalek be his most racist tonight. And I just want to encourage that. And you're always welcome to be racist here, darling. You know that.
Such an order, right? The idea that like we have these really great goals, and I think there is, a lot in common with some of the thought of like Mills and Wollstonecraft and all these early theorists, right? But the problem is like we're requiring a very big change in the way that we orient society. We're also alongside of that saying, well, we're going to have this really robust democratic system, right?
Just don't say the N-word with a hard R in the chat, please.
These actors who have said, we're not worried about, trying to do some sort of kind of revolution when we see things aren't going the right way. What stopped these actors from basically appealing to the lowest common denominator in our thought, in terms of our most base instincts, I guess, to be like, no, this is too hard. To organize society like this is too difficult, and we should just go back to something that's easy, right? I mean, and the biggest issue you're going to come up against is the fact that you're going to have elections every 4 years, 2 years, what have you,
Or
right?
they've been through and
And it's gonna be
everything.
so easy to be
Probably
like,
true.
well, the project of, collective democracy in the workplace is difficult. We're dealing with market forces outside of the state. Let's just go back to doing the old thing, right? How does liberal socialism defend against that? And I maybe to kind of go off of this, like, doesn't it seem like the more likely way to achieve these goals is to centralize power and not worry about democracy?
Yeah, I mean, that's an important set of questions. So I'm going to break this into two. The first part I'll theorize a bit, and then I'll try to give a practical example, right? Just to kind of ground this a little bit. So in terms of the theory, right, I think that once you understand right-wing thought as this commitment to recognizable superiority on the part of some groups, you can actually understand a lot more easily why it could have a certain kind of populist appeal, right? That might seem contradictory because you think, how can elitism be populist? But think about making a pitch to the public, right? My saying you're the equal of somebody from Mexico or the equal of somebody from sub-Saharan Africa will resonate a lot less with people than my saying you're actually better than everybody else. This was your country, your world, your culture, and that has been taken away from you. And vote for me, and I'll kick all those unworthy people out, or I'll send them back to the jobs that they belong in, and you will be reconsecrated as the gem that you are, right? For a lot of people, that's going to be a much more convincing pitch than a pitch aimed at equality, right? And I'm not really sure how it is that liberal or left movements can counteract the emotional resonance of that yet. Theoretically, what I can say is that I think that the great Canadian philosopher, I'm Canadian, Charles Taylor is right. In his recent book, Cosmic Connections, what he pointed out is that one of the reasons why progressive thought or left-wing thought is always runs into these difficulties, it is actually more demanding than conservatism. It's a lot more demanding. This is what he calls the kind of axial approach that we need to understand the trajectory of modernity is moving on, right? Where he says, liberalism and all forms of leftism demand that you commit yourself to a kind of universalism that holds that all life is sacred. That's the Dworkin connection, right? And that we need to value each person's life on the planet as equally sacred. That is so demanding an ethic that we have yet to find a society that can properly instantiate it, right? And it's a lot easier for many conservatives to say, like J.D. Vance said, look, we're going to put ourselves first and we're not going to bother with all that. But this kind of leads into a response to your question, because I think that if liberals or leftists are going to respond rhetorically to the right in a way that is theoretically consistent, it needs to be by acknowledging that what we're asking is a more demanding ethic, but by pointing out something that I think a lot of Americans resonate with, which is why shouldn't we challenge ourselves to give into the better angels of our nature, right? Why accept this kind of low way of approaching politics where the president is going to happily accept a jet from Qatar and people are just going to deal with it because they want to see millions of Mexicans sent back home, even if they happen to be residents here for a long time, right? In terms of how to practically instantiate something like liberal socialism, I'm very overt in the book that I actually don't think that there are any good empirical reference points to make, right? And I think that this isn't just problematic empirically. One of the things that I point out in the book is one of the reasons liberal socialism has never really caught on is it's way too ideal theoretic, right? There's really not been enough attention paid to issues like power, issues like practical politics. Way too much of it exists in Rawlsian and Millsian headspace, right? And I think that if liberal socialism is going to have a shot, it's going to need to accompany what I call a Rawlsian optimism of the will with a lot more Marxist pessimism of the intellect. Now, saying that, I think that there are models that we could potentially look to as examples on how to improve. So I wrote an essay on a good book, Nordic Socialism, for a Damage magazine called Closer to Mars. And what I point out is that what Pele Dragset calls Nordic socialism has produced the most prosperous societies the world has ever seen. Now, many people are unhappy with certain aspects of this, certainly on the left, and they say, well, it doesn't really go far enough in terms of actually achieving our goals, which is a robust economic democracy. But to the title of my review, what I say is, look, if I had found out that someone had built a rocket ship and that rocket ship had gotten to the moon, and I was trying to build a rocket ship that got to Mars, I wouldn't sit there and say that rocket ship has only gotten to the moon, so I'm not going to learn anything from it. I would say, boy, that's pretty impressive. I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can from it. And then let's see if we can go further, right? So I think if we were to build something like a Nordic-style social democracy in the United States, the way that, say, Bernie Sanders has called for, then that would be a huge step forward. And for those on the left who want to go further still, then I say, let's just get to the moon before we try to get to Mars.
So you referenced Carl Schmitt.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that, like, the way I understand Schmitt saying is that when the power to define rights is located within the nation state, that the manipulation of who is, I guess, like who can access those rights is always up for debate. I guess, to what extent is it possible, if that is true, to actually achieve this vision at the nation state level alone? Like, is it possible to have this sort of vision without having some sort of universal conception of global democracy?
I would actually say that to fully achieve it, then yeah, we would need to embrace that kind of universalism. But to my point about baby steps, right, I think that that's really unattainable right now. So what you're referring to is Schmitt's argument in a variety of different books, but primarily The Crisis of Parliamentary Democracy, where he actually insists that equality will always require a certain kind of inequality. It's quite a striking observation where he says, equality can only exist within certain tightly parametered groups, namely the nation state, and being committed to equality within our group is going to mean treating other people unequally. You choose whoever it happens to be that are your enemies, right? Your ideological foes, your theological foes, your national foes, Jews, right? I mean, he was a vigorous anti-Semite, right? I think that, there's a certain amount of truth to this, right? In the sense that it's always been difficult to figure out how far we can expand the horizon of liberal concerns, ever practical, everyday perspective. But where I disagree with Schmitt is that I don't think that it's the case that we just say, well, liberals have to make choices about whose needs they're going to prioritize. So really, they're no different than Nazis, right? In terms of prioritizing the in-group over the out-group. I think there are degrees of concern that you can show to different people, and that should be continuously expanding wherever possible.
I am now absolutely convinced James Lindsay cribbed this guy. I am fucking absolute. Can someone go into James Lindsay's replies and just mention this guy's name and just see how James reacts? Can we just start posting this guy's lecture in James's replies and say, actually, can we just do that? I'm going to post this. I'm going to post the link. If you are not banned by James Lindsay, can you go and post this link in his replies and ask him if he took inspiration from this guy? Because they're saying exactly the same thing. This is literally James Lindsay's talking points in a fucking lecture.
And I think that liberalism and liberal democracy has done a lot better job of showing concern to as many people as possible, compared again to a fascist state. And I don't even know how anybody could question that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so first of all, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And second of all, it seems like you do value to some degree, like collectiveness and like this kind of like communal spirit, this idea of civic sense. And my question is, so China has a lot of this, right? Like it's a very collectivist kind of civilization, and most recently, it's kind of opened up and it's embraced a form of like kind of free market capitalism. But there's still like an authoritarian government. There's still like a forced kind of social sense on like rich people in China that they have to take some kind of social responsibility. The problem is that China can be described as a mature fascist economy, and I just wanted to know like what you think of that.
Well, I don't know very much about Chinese politics, right? So I do not want to tread where I don't know very much, right? The most that I can say is, certainly from my standpoint, I think that genuinely being committed to left-wing goals means being committed not just to the economic redistribution of goods towards the poor, but also an emancipatory society where people have a meaningful say in how it is that they're governed. And an authoritarian state structure is just not compatible with that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. We need to break this down. Okay. So for new people, what he just said may have sounded rather innocuous. What he's talking about is overthrowing our current system of government. So the reason I want to play this again is because I really want you guys to understand the language, and I want you to understand how this shows up in the world, because it doesn't sound like he just said anything crazy. But what he's actually talking about is undoing our current form of government and replacing it with something completely different. Okay, so listen to what he just said again.
Know very much, right? The most that I can say is, certainly from my standpoint, I think that genuinely being committed to left-wing goals means being committed not just to the economic redistribution of goods towards the poor, but also an emancipatory society where people have a meaningful say in how it is that they're governed.
Being committed to left-wing goals means being committed to an emancipatory society where people have a meaningful say in government. If we extrapolate out what he just said, he is talking about overthrowing the Constitution, because what he means when he says a meaningful participation in government is he wants to abolish the Electoral College. He wants to abolish the Supreme Court, all courts actually. He wants to abolish the Senate, and he wants to abolish the executive branch, because what the far left wants, it's emancipation from capitalism, exactly. What the far left wants is they want some sort of like House of Representatives style thing that is much larger than we currently have. They don't believe the Senate should exist. They don't believe the court should exist. They don't believe the executive should exist. They believe that all of these things prevent people from having direct participation in government. So I want to just pause and display this again because I want people to hear what this normally sounds like. We absolutely get communists and socialists on video all the time, overtly talking about overthrowing the government. I mean, you guys have seen it on the channel if you've been around for any length of time. We will catch them talking about overtly overthrowing the state, right? But he's doing it in a much more subtle way where he's saying, I just want an emancipatory society in which people can participate in government. But what does that mean? What does it actually mean? This is why we harp so much on the definitions of things and why we listen to what they say in the real world, because sometimes it's so subtle. They understand, and here's the big point I want people to understand. They understand what it means. The people in this room understand what he's saying, at least in theory. They might not directly think of it as overthrowing the government, but they do think about, oh yeah, we want to abolish the Electoral College. Oh yeah, we want to abolish the courts because the courts are not elected and therefore they're not direct representatives of the people. Oh yeah, we want to abolish the Senate because the Senate is not directly elected. Again, it's not a direct representation of the people. They do understand this stuff theoretically. Most of them just don't extrapolate it out to what it actually means. They don't want a president. They don't want hierarchy. If you have a president, you have hierarchy. When he's talking about redistributing wealth for the more poor people, he's talking about eliminating hierarchy. The left doesn't believe in hierarchy, so a president is the ultimate form of hierarchy. Listen again, and we'll let it play this time.
Wanted to know like what you think of that.
Well, I don't know very much about Chinese politics, right? So I do not want to tread where I don't know very much, right? The most that I can say is certainly from my standpoint, I think that genuinely being committed to left-wing goals means being committed not just to the economic redistribution of goods towards the poor, but also an emancipatory society where people have a meaningful say in how it is that they're governed. And an authoritarian state structure is just not compatible with that in any way, shape, or form, right? Now, I don't deny that China has done a lot in lifting people out of poverty, right? But I would also emphasize that the tens of millions of people who were killed as a result of something like Maoism makes me very, very hesitant to anywhere close to embracing that model, right? So that's all I can say about that.
Hey, thanks,
you
Simona.
referenced the Overton
Appreciate
window,
it.
I think is what you called it. Could you elaborate on that and how it might explain the rise of Mamdani and Trump-like figures in modern politics?
Sure. I mean, there's been a lot of debate about why American politics
Mamdani
has
is
wound
a
up being so
Trump-like
weird
figure.
recently and when it all started going downhill, right? Some people said it's, the civil rights movement. Some people would say it's been going in this direction since the Civil War. So again, you can really pick your point. I would argue that what's occurred, whenever you want to periodize it, has been the delegitimization of hegemonic neoliberal institutions and values. And no one is quite sure what should replace that. And what has stepped in to replace it, quite successfully so far, has been various forms of illiberal rightism. In this country, it goes by the name of Trumpism. It looks like Nigel Farage is going to win in the United Kingdom, so that's another example there. There's Orbanism. Again, you can choose Modiism. You can choose your flavor of this, right? Now, the reason why it is that I think that the illiberal right has been the beneficiary of this delegitimization of neoliberal institutions.
All right, pop quiz for the chat. Pop quiz for the chat. Who is going to work to make the redistributed supply for the 85%? Pop quiz for the chat. What happens if you don't work in a socialist communist society? Let us know the answer. We need to educate the new people. What happens if you decide you don't want to work in a communist or socialist utopia? Let us know in the chat. Thank you for the super chat. Wouldn't tribalist factions go their own way and break up the country in this scenario? Maybe. Certainly a possibility. Appreciate the super chat. What happens when you don't work in a communist society, guys? If you don't work, you don't eat. Who controls the food in a communist society? Who control? There are no more private farms in a communist society. If you don't work, you don't eat. This is how a lot of people starve. So you can pretend that you're going to be a hero all you want, but if you don't own a homestead where you're making all your own food, you ain't eating nothing in a communist society if you aren't working, because you don't get access to the rations and you don't get access to the food supply. It's real simple.
Is precisely that liberals have not listened to what ordinary people want, right? Ordinary people who have not been much more clear that they are tired of politicians being unresponsive to their needs. They're deeply unhappy with the thought that they don't live in a genuinely democratic society. And instead what we get are people writing op-eds like the one I saw back in 2016, that it's time for the elites to rise up against the swinish multitude, against the vulgar masses. These were liberal elites, right? We need to push back against these kind of vulgar MAGA figures. And I think until liberals are willing to take a closer look at why it is that our creed has failed, we're going to wind up in the Moines situation, right? Which is it's going to continue to fail. And even where it does survive, it's just not going to be good enough. Any other questions?
Time for one more question.
Yeah, please.
What is the future of the Constitution according to the right wing?
Oh!
Well, that's a big question, right?
Good
In fact,
question.
there's a lot of debate about that going on in the right now, right? People like Chris Rufo, for example, who some of you might know was Ron DeSantis's mover and shaker, the architect of the kind of post-secondary reforms there that are intended to be emulated across the country. He's much more committed to what we might call kind of originalism that still pays deference to the founders, but of course interprets the founders' intentions in a way that aligns with right-wing goals. Right now, though, what's really at the kind of cutting edge is Vermeulean common good constitutionalism. Politico did a big op-ed on this not too long ago, pointing out how many young conservative lawyers are quite open-minded to these kinds of Vermeulean visions. So common good constitutionalism by Vermeulen essentially says originalism was always a sham, right? Every conservative knew if they were intelligent enough that we were just using it as a Trojan horse to advance our goals. If they didn't think that that's what we were doing, then they were too stupid to really be part of this movement. That's why I like Vermeulen, right? He's kind of overt about these things. And he says we don't need this Trojan horse any longer, right? We control the court system. We definitely control the Supreme Court. So there's no need to kind of hide behind we're going to be committed to the founders' vision any longer. Let's just enact a conservative vision and use judges as a vehicle for doing so, right? And there's something that's kind of refreshing about the book in that respect, right? Since many of us who've been critical of originalism, we're like, oh, thank God, someone's finally willing to say that on the right, right? But it's also kind of terrifying in the sense that you're like, well, now the gloves are truly off, right? There's not even the veneer being concerned with the liberal or Republican norms that the founders tried to instantiate. So I have wrote a recent book with my former supervisor, who's a good friend of mine, Les Jacobs, Against Post-Liberal Courts and Justice. It's about reintroducing Dworkinian thought, right? And what I argue is that in the medium term...
Do you hear what he said? Against courts. I recently wrote a book against courts because these guys don't believe the court system should exist.
So I have wrote a recent book with my former supervisor, who's a good friend of mine, Les Jacobs, Against Post-Liberal Courts and Justice. It's about reintroducing Dworkinian thought, right? And what I argue is that in the medium term, what liberals and the left need to do is to develop a theory of constitutional interpretation that has a lot more heft to it than what's been around for a long time, which is a kind of pragmatic, experimentalist approach to constitutional reform, right? The kind of idea being that, society, our interpretation of the Constitution needs to change and evolve as society.
Hang on. I see many people in the chat saying he's not answering the questions. This is word salad. No, guys, he is answering the questions. The problem is you don't speak the language that he's speaking. And I really need people to be aware of this. He's not word salading right now. I'm tracking everything. And I think there are probably people in the chat who are also tracking what he's saying because we've listened to these people before. I said this at the beginning of the presentation. I'm going to say this again. If you are new to watching socialism, tonight's episode might be a lot because I told you there was going to be very socialist language in it. And so if you are unfamiliar with socialism, it's like you don't understand what he's saying. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't stick around and listen. You should ask questions. It's okay to say that you don't understand. It's perfectly fine to say you don't understand. There was a time when we all didn't understand, okay? But what you have to, the reason I'm pointing this out is you have to understand that you don't yet speak the language, because this is the immersive part of learning the language. Just because you don't understand doesn't mean he isn't saying anything. You need to make sure you ask questions so you understand. And most of the time, you just need to allow yourself to be confused for a second, because once you start listening to enough of this stuff, you will start to understand it. All right. So it's not that he's speaking word salad. You just don't speak the language yet. And that's okay. We're about to finish up this lecture, guys, so I do want to finish this one up. We do have another video to watch after this, so I just want to, there's like 30 seconds of this lecture left, so let's just finish this one up, and then we can go on to the next one.
That's right. I just don't think that's inspiring enough for liberals and leftists to get behind, whereas I think that something like Dworkinianism generally does have a lot of meat to it and can provide a substantial alternative. But I don't want to bore everyone with too much detail about that. That's the kind of medium-term thing that I think we need to do to respond to that.
Okay, I think our time is up. Before we thank our guest, let me remind you our next event in this series is in 2 weeks, November 6th. We have Sam Moyn, and heard a little introduction to Sam Moyn today, but you'll hear a lot more in 2 weeks. Join me now in thanking Matt McManus for a really interesting.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt. All right, that was a rather boring lecture in which we learned that this left-wing professor has absolutely no idea what's going on the right, which is also good information. But I told you guys we're going to be watching 2 lectures tonight. The second one's a little bit shorter, so it's about 40 minutes long. Now, this is the one that I'm actually really excited about. I want to hear what this guy has to say. This is out of Columbia University. This was 2 weeks ago. This is out of the Columbia Center for Contemporary Critical Thought, which critical thought means critical theory. And this guy's lecture is titled, "What is to be Done About the Radical Far Right, Bannon, Lenin, and the Dialectic of Smashing the State?" And if we read the description here, "I am a Leninist," Steve Bannon reportedly said in 2016. Well, Steve Bannon was being a retard if he said that. "Lenin wanted to destroy the state, and that's my goal too. I want to bring everything crashing down and destroy today's establishment." Well, not in the same way that Lenin did, actually. In the first months of his second mandate, Trump has done just that. In this lecture, Professor Bernard E. Harcourt explores the radical nature of the far right today and argues that progressives as well need to return to the dialectics of Lenin and Hegel. So that's what we're listening now. We're going to be listening to this for the rest of the stream. Guys, please make sure you have mounted the like button if you have not already. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. where we watch real radical revolutionary socialists. Tonight, we're taking some time out to listen to a couple college lectures that have happened in the past couple weeks, specifically with college professors talking about the radical far right and their perception of it, so that we can learn what they're teaching college students. Yeah, according to James Lindsay, Hegel is a wizard. Yep. True. True. All right, guys, let's get this party started.
In February 2025, 1 month into President Donald Trump's second mandate, the critic W.J.T. Mitchell, or Tom Mitchell, intervened in the discussion to make what he considered a conservative point. Mitchell called for the restoration of the liberal order. President Trump had only been in power for a few weeks, but had already dismantled USAID and the Department of Education, fired legions of federal workers, seized control of independent agencies, and withdrew from international institutions.
Back in the good old days.
Mitchell, who identifies as progressive, did not call for revolution or radical change, but simply for a return to the status quo. Trump was smashing the state. Mitchell was calling for a restoration. Now, many of us in the seminar couldn't help but agree with Mitchell. The radical changes that President Trump was foisting on the country and the global order in just a few weeks were unprecedented and deeply threatening. And yet, Mitchell's intervention and my positive reaction at the time still leaves me puzzled today. How is it that so many of us on the left have become so conservative?
is it that we become so conservative? Okay, Amalek wants an early life check. Okay, well, let's see. What is this guy's name? Professor Bernard E. Harcourt. Let's just see. Just for Amalek, because he's been a little down lately. Let's see what his Wikipedia says. Let's see. Oh, he doesn't have an early life section of his Wikipedia. You might be out of luck. He might not be Jewish. Oh no. It doesn't say. It doesn't say. Here, I'll put his name in the chat. You guys can go try to figure out if he's Jewish or not.
Whatever happened to the radical ideas of smashing the state, destroying the old, and ringing in the new? Where had our abolitionist instincts gone? Especially the call to
You think he
defund the
is?
police and
Where
shutter
do
the
you see that?
institutions of the punitive society. Did the left really simply want to restore the American state with all its neoliberal hypocrisy, militarization, and
All right, hang on. Let me check my DMs to see what Amalek said. Okay, according to Amalek, yes, Professor Bernard E. Harcourt is Jewish. He has publicly shared that his father was a Jewish refugee who fled Nazi-occupied France in where did you get this? 1940 at age 13, with some family members tragically unable to escape, and mentioned in his 2011 Aims of Education address at the University of Chicago and a 2025 essay in Boston Review. Okay, according to Amalek, he's Jewish. Okay, well, I trust Amalek. He's usually pretty intellectually honest. You'll have to add that to his Wikipedia. Someone make sure you guys do that.
mass incarceration? To formulate the question in another way,
I should get glasses
since
like
when
that.
had the left given up on the radical idea of radically transforming society and the state
Oh yeah,
and
what's that
creating a
mean?
new world order?
A new world order?
What explains the resistance on the left?
Do we have a did we just get a Columbia University professor calling for the radical overthrow of the state and the creation of a new world order, and he happens to be Jewish? See, this is why you guys come to Socialism Saturday. Like fucking literally, what? Again?
Militarization and mass incarceration? To formulate the question in another way, since when had the left given up on the radical idea of radically transforming society and the state and creating a new world order? What explains the resistance on the left to a more radical strategy of taking advantage of President Trump's dismantling of the neoliberal state and then, in the chaos, seizing power and reorienting politics in a truly progressive direction?
I'm sorry, what the fuck? Okay. Oh, I have to clip this. Hang on. I have to clip this. Let me just take a sec to make sure my computer I have to fucking clip this. You guys know this. Like, this is just like the easiest fucking clip in like the history of fucking clips.
In another way, punitive society. Did the left really simply want to restore the American state with all its neoliberal hypocrisy, militarization, and mass incarceration? To formulate the question in another way, since when had the left given up on the radical idea of radically transforming society and the state and creating a new world order? What explains the resistance on the left to a more radical strategy of taking advantage of President Trump's dismantling of the neoliberal state and then, in the chaos, seizing power and reorienting politics in a truly progressive direction? The right is the radical party today. Now, the radicalization of the right has a long history in the United States.
Hang on.
It stretches back.
We'll get back to the radicalization of the right in a second. Hang on. That's a fucking clip. That is a fuck. Give me just 2 seconds, guys. Let me just make this clip an actual clip that we can put out on the internet. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds to work this out. Wow. I love it when we find random shit like this on Socialism Saturday. It's like there's just nothing better than when you randomly come across a clip of a leftist college professor from Columbia University calling for the creation of a new world order and the smashing of the fucking state. Just give me 1 sec just to make this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful clip. Hang on 1 sec. One sec, guys. Please make sure to mount the like button for me.
To formulate the question in another way, since when had the
Hang on. It's gonna edit this real quick.
Since when had the left given up on the radical idea of radically transforming society and the state and creating a new world order? What explains the resistance on the left to a more radical
1 sec.
taking advantage of President Trump's dismantling of the neoliberal state, and then, in the chaos, seizing power and reorienting politics in a truly progressive direction?
All right. I got the clip. Got the clip. Gotta get it in my template here. Hang on. We're gonna be tweeting the fuck out of this. You guys ready to tweet the fuck out of this on the internet? Hang on. I just gotta do this real quick. What I gotta do, you guys can't see it. I gotta just put like just some branding on it because people like Andy No will steal my stuff if I don't do it. But also what I need to do is I need to actually write what this person is on the clip. So give me 1 sec, guys. Please hang in there. We're going to be tweeting the shit out of this clip in like less than a minute or two. I just need to write who this guy is on the actual clip so that, hang on, exposed on Socialism Saturday by Karlyn Borysenko. What is the date? November 1st, 2025. And this guy is Jewish. I should put like Jewish fucking intellectual or some such shit in the description. I'm not going to do that, but I should. Hang on. This guy is Bernard E. Harcourt, Columbia University Center for Contemporary Critical Thought. This lecture was given on October 13th, 2025. Okay. We put this information on the clip so we can track where we got this information later. All right. All right. I'm exporting the clip. NWO. And now we're going to tweet that shit. And we are almost done and we will be able to get back to the lecture. Hang on. A Columbia University professor calls for the left to overthrow the state and form a new world order. We just watched this on Socialism Saturday. Okay, we're going to tweet the shit out of this. Where is it? There is the clip. See, look how much faster my computer is now that I got a new computer and I can do this stuff in real time. How great is that? Okay, he is actually a Columbia University professor, right? We're just gonna say yes. Should I put Jewish? Okay, let me ask you guys this. One in the chat if I should say a Jewish Columbia University professor. Two in the chat if I should leave the Jewish part out. What do you guys think? Should I put the Jewish part in the tweet or should I leave the Jewish part out of the tweet? 1 for Jewish, 2 for generic. Yeah, I think the ones have it. We're doing the Jewish. A Jewish Columbia University professor calls for the left to overthrow the state and form a new world order. Hang on one sec. Okay, I got it. Posting now. Uploading now. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Everyone's gonna retweet the fuck out of this, okay? You guys, when I post a tweet, you need to do 4 things. You need to bookmark it, you need to like it, you need to reply to it, and you need to quote tweet it, okay? That's what we do. That's how you make tweets go viral. Is you bookmark them, you like them, you heart them, you reply to them, and you quote tweet them. And that's how we make shit go viral on Twitter. And you do those 4 things, and that triggers the algorithm to actually show people my stuff. So I'm uploading it right now. Twitter is taking its good long time. This is a 43-second clip. Well, if you did something to get blocked, that's your own damn business, bro. What'd you do to get blocked in the first place? If you're not on Twitter, don't worry about it, all right? I'm just waiting for... Why the fuck is Twitter taking so long to upload this video? There it goes. Okay, got it. All right, putting the link in the chat. Everyone needs to tweet the fuck out of this. There you go. Have a good time. Even tweet it if you oppose the Jewish being put in it, because he is in fact Jewish. We're just stating a fact. It's not my fault he's Jewish. All right? So everyone's going to bookmark this tweet. Everyone's going to quote tweet it. Everyone's going to reply to it. And everyone's going to heart it and retweet it as well. Actually, retweet and quote tweet. You can do both. All right. Now that you guys are doing that, let's get back to the lecture.
Presidents Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, President Trump's dismantling of the neoliberal state.
Well, I doubt I blocked you for calling me the best of the best, but if that's true, just put your handle in the chat and I'll unblock you, okay? But I doubt that actually happened. I think you're probably lying. But since you're here for Socialism Saturday, I will overlook the fact that you're obviously lying and I will unblock you. Just put your handle in the chat.
And then, in the chaos, seizing power and reorienting politics in a truly progressive direction. The right is the radical party today. Now, the radicalization of the right has a long history in the United States. It stretches back to Presidents Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon, to Senators Barry Goldwater, Strom Thurmond, Joseph McCarthy, among others, or further back to the attack on Reconstruction in the 1870s, or even further back to the Southern Secession. In recent times, though, the Tea Party movement is what turned the far right radical.
The Tea Party.
Steve Bannon, a key figure in the Tea Party,
Amalek, do you think that the Tea Party turned to the far right radical? Was it the Tea Party that did it?
Bannon was the East Coast coordinator of the Tea Party groups at the time, and he'd shortly become the chief strategist during the first 8 months.
Swear to God. All right, you're unblocked. Relax.
In a conversation with Ronald Radosh, Bannon reportedly said, "I am a Leninist." When asked what he meant by that, Bannon reportedly responded, "Lenin wanted to destroy the state, and that's my goal too. I want to bring everything crashing down and destroy all of today's establishment."
Lily Gladys is
for
good.
Bannon, the traditional
no.
American
Hang on.
conservatives
No,
too moderate.
no, I'm sorry. It's okay for you guys to like Lily Gladys, and I understand why you do because she's pretty and boobs and all that stuff. But Lily Gladys is a stupid, dumb cunt who I do not support at all. She's a grifting, clout chasing, evil cunt. But if you like her, that's fine. We're allowed to like different things. But I disagree. But thanks for the money. I appreciate it.
The Republican Party was not radical enough. Even the National Review and the Weekly Standard, well-known neoconservative outlets, were, in Bannon's words, left-wing magazines, and I want to destroy them also. Bannon set his sights on smashing the entire political establishment, including the Republican Party and its leadership in Congress, and building a new political system based on Tea Party and now MAGA principles. Many others on the far right, like the activist Christopher Rufo, claimed to be radical as well. In an interview in the New York Times podcast, The Daily, on April 11, 2025, Rufo states, "I think that actually we are a counter-radical force in American life that paradoxically has to use what many see as radical techniques." Now, it is Lenin who most famously called for the smashing of the state. And this raises
That means
a real
capitalism.
puzzle. How is it that the far right today has become Leninist
Your retweet is fire. Let's see.
and the left Burkean? Now, Lenin famously advocated smashing the state in the 2 months leading up to the October 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in his book, The State and Revolution, which was published a few months later in 1918. Lenin, at the time, was confronting the social democratic strategy of using the electoral process to move the state into socialism.
Yeah, I agree.
And he
Gayla.
advocated instead
Thank
for a
you.
more radical approach, namely to break and smash the state machinery. He attributed this more radical
no.
approach to Marx.
No, we don't. Go
more
away.
specifically to the
That's
Marx
inappropriate.
of 1852. Lenin wrote, and in this remarkable argument, and he's referring here to the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, which Marx wrote in 1852. In the 18th Brumaire, he says, Marxism takes a tremendous step forward compared with the Communist Manifesto. In the latter, the question of the state is still treated in an extremely abstract manner, in the most general terms and expressions. In the above quoted passage from the 18th Brumaire, the question is treated in a concrete manner, and the conclusion is extremely precise, definite, practical, and palpable. All previous revolutions perfected the state machine, whereas it must be broken, smashed. This conclusion, he wrote, is the chief and fundamental point in the Marxist theory of the state. And it is precisely this fundamental point which has been completely ignored by the dominant official social democratic parties and indeed distorted, as we shall see later, by the foremost theoretician of the Second International, Karl Kautsky. So, the Communist Manifesto, Lenin argued, had not addressed the key question of how a proletarian state could displace a bourgeois state as a historical and as a practical matter. It was silent on the actual method of transformation.
What is the method?
By contrast, Marx specifically answered that question in the 18th Brumaire. Lenin goes on to write, quote, "This is the question Marx raised and answered in 1852. True to his philosophy of dialectical materialism, Marx takes as his basis the historical experience of the great revolutions, of the great years of revolution, 1848 to 1851. Here, as everywhere else, his theory is a summing up of experience, illuminated by a profound philosophical conception of the world and a rich knowledge of history." Now, Lenin's mention of Marx's profound philosophical conception of the world was a reference, of course, to Marx's deep and constant engagement with Hegel's writings.
I got to get those glasses.
And in
I
this
need those
regard,
glasses.
as Kevin B. Anderson remarks, Lenin was also referencing his own study of Hegel in 1914 and 1915. Some might argue that Lenin's call to smash the state was decidedly un-Hegelian, not only because the state is the pinnacle of the realization of freedom in Hegel's political thought, but also because the idea sounds undialectical. It seems to assume the possibility of the end of the state or the end of history.
Yeah, well, you know
and
what?
That seems to undermine.
You know what? This is a feature, not a bug. Okay, if I get those glasses, conservatives are gonna lose their shit. They already lost their shit when I got the cat wing glasses. They already lost their shit over the last pair of glasses that I had. Like, might as well. I also want to get like a little pair of like spectacles that just sits on the end of my nose, like Emma Goldman used to have. I want to get I'm gonna make myself look like the worst SJW. I'm gonna dye my hair fucking pink. That's gonna be the next color of my hair. You thought conservatives lost their shit when I dyed my hair red? I'm dyeing my hair pink, motherfucker, and I'm getting those glasses, and I'm not gonna go to the gym, and I'm not gonna lose weight, and I'll wear whatever the fuck I want, and they can suck every dick. I don't care how conservatives feel about it.
The dialectical movement in Hegel's thought.
I'm gonna
Even
give
if
myself a
many
queer haircut.
Scholars of Hegel
I'm gonna give myself a queer haircut. I'm gonna dye it pink. We're gonna shave the sides of my head again. I'm gonna bring back the nose ring.
Now, I would argue instead that Lenin's call to smash the state machine was entirely Hegelian, entirely dialectical, and has to be understood as the product of Lenin's study of Hegel in 1914 and 1915. It may be helpful then to return to Lenin's confrontation with Hegel's science of logic to make sense of his later politics in 1917. It will give us a better grasp of the idea of smashing the state machine, what that might mean.
Can you guys imagine? Wait. Okay, I know we're being a little silly now because the show's been going on for a while. Can you guys imagine in a reality in which I get invited on Joe Rogan? Like, if this ever happens, here's what's gonna happen. If I ever get asked to go on Joe Rogan, I am going in my best SJW outfit. The hair is getting dyed, the big ol' fucking spectacle glasses. I'm gonna look so fucking leftist if I ever go on Joe Rogan, and conservatives are going to lose their mind, and it would be hilarious. I'm gonna wear I just bought a Protect. Did you guys see at one of the trans bookstores that I went to in Portland? I bought a Protect Trans Kids t-shirt with the knife on it. So now I have a Protect Trans Kids t-shirt with the knife, with pink hair, with shaved sides of my head, with dark spectacle glasses. That's the Joe Rogan outfit right there, if that ever happens.
And how we might redeploy the idea on the left.
I'm gonna wear a little hat or something. Yo, I met Duncan.
Lenin's return.
I hung out with Duncan in Portland. Duncan's a really cool dude. Duncan happened to be doing comedy in Portland while I was there, and he invited me to his comedy show, and me and Honey Badger Mom got to hang out with him for like an hour in the green room, and it was awesome. So Duncan's a cool dude. We love Duncan. But what I'm not going to do, I'm going to rewind this a little bit because I'm just talking. But what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to like beg Duncan to get me on Joe Rogan. I just fucking met Duncan, okay? And I like Duncan because he's funny and he seems like a genuine guy. And I'm not gonna, I don't fucking like doing this like networking thing. I fucking hate that shit. So like, here's the deal. If the universe deems it so, we are leaving this up to God. If God wants me to be on Joe Rogan, then the universe will align and something will happen and I will get the invite in exactly the right time. I'm not trying to like navigate this. If Duncan wants to tell Joe Rogan to have me on, he totally can, but I'm not going to ask him. I'm not going to do that shit because I just think he's a funny, cool guy. All right. That's how we play this. If the universe deems it so, it will be so. If the universe does not deem it so, it will not be so. And that's cool too, man. all things happen in their own best time, everything works out in your own best way. That's how you got to see it, regardless of if it happens or not. Whatever happens is exactly what should happen. Okay, now back to this. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna stop talking.
And 1915. It may be helpful then to return to Lenin's confrontation with Hegel's Science of Logic to make sense of his later politics in 1917. It will give us a better grasp of the idea of smashing the state machine, what that might mean, and how we might redeploy the idea on the left today.
Oh, yeah? Tell us how you're going to redeploy it.
Lenin's return to Hegel. In his darkest hour, at the outbreak of World War I, at a time when internationalist workers' parties turned nationalistic and patriotic, and the Second International collapsed, Lenin plunged into a month-long study of Hegel's Science of Logic. In the reading room of the Bern Library in Switzerland, in exile, Lenin buried himself in Hegel's writings, copying passages, annotating them, writing commentary. The experience was formative. As Lenin famously exclaimed in his philosophical notebooks, in perhaps the most famous passage, reading Hegel was essential to understanding Marx. He wrote, aphorism, it is impossible completely to understand Marx's Capital, and especially its first chapter, without having thoroughly studied and understood the whole of Hegel's logic. Consequently,
that doesn't even make sense. Capital was written way before Hegel.
The Marxists understood Marx. Now, scholars from Georg Lukács, Henri Lefebvre, C.L.R. James, Raya Dunayevskaya, Louis Althusser, Kevin B. Anderson, and Slavoj Žižek.
Yeah, this guy's creepy.
And figures like Mao himself have for decades now drawn our attention to Lenin's reading of Hegel. In this regard, I highly recommend Anderson's 1995 study, Lenin, Hegel, and Western Marxism, A Critical Study, as well as a brilliant seminar with Columbia faculty, colleagues, and students on Lenin's reading of Hegel at Hegel 1313 on October 8, 2025. On my reading, Lenin found two interrelated ideas of greatest interest.
Vampires are anti-Semitic?
First, the element of self-movement at the heart of all life and societal change. And second, how that element of self-movement feeds a dialectical process. First, throughout his commentary, Lenin focuses on movement, and more specifically on what he calls self-movement. As Professor Stathis Gourgouris emphasized at our recent seminar, Lenin placed the emphasis on the self in self-movement. It is a process that comes from within, that is immanent. In a telling passage, Lenin writes, movement and self-movement, this, note bene, arbitrary, independent, spontaneous, internally necessary movement, change, movement and vitality, the principle of all self-movement, impulse, trieb, right, the drive, to movement and to activity, the opposite of dead being. Who would believe that this is the core of Hegelianism, of abstract and abstruse, ponderous, absurd Hegelianism? This core had to be discovered, understood.
Okay. So Mac is asking, and this is a fair question, how many people out there are like this? Well, probably not many, Mac, but here's what people really need to understand. You guys see someone like this and you think, no one's actually like this in the real world. This guy is crazy, whatever. And that might be true. But this is how all of this bullshit got started. What the center that this guy is doing a lecture for is the contemporary home of the Frankfurt School. This is the Columbia University Center for Critical Thought. That is the contemporary American home of the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School is where all of these ideas came to being in the first place. So it doesn't matter if there are a ton of people who think like this guy. This guy is in the incubator for all of this crazy leftist bullshit. And it's the people like him that do lectures like this and run centers like the Center for Contemporary Critical Thought at Columbia University. That is the incubator for all of this crazy leftist bullshit. So this is the origin point. So it doesn't matter if there aren't that many people like him, because he is at the tip of the spear for this leftist bullshit in like the same way that we're at the tip of the spear for studying these people. So yeah, he's going to talk crazy. Yeah, he's not going to sound like he's making sense. No, there's probably not many people that would agree with him, but that doesn't matter, because he and his comrades are deeply influential in the terms of the overall cultural zeitgeist. Does that make sense? This is where these ideas start, and then it trickles out from there. In 5 years, there will be people saying the same shit he is, because he is at the origin of all this crazy bullshit.
Überretten, rescued, laid bare, refined, which is precisely what Marx and Engels did. The idea of universal movement and change, 1813 logic, was conjectured before its application to life and society. In regard to society, it was proclaimed earlier, 1847, by which he means the Communist Manifesto. Then it was demonstrated in application to man, 1859, which would have been the contribution to the critique of political economy. What's so important about this passage, of course, is the idea of the centrality, the core of Hegelianism being this idea of universal self, movement, and change. Now, Lenin elaborates on these Hegelian notions in his essay on the question of dialectics in 1915. There, he underscores that there are two ways to interpret the conception of movement at the heart of historical change. The first is the idea that historical development is a back and forth, a repetition, or what he calls increases and decreases. The second is the idea of historical development as the unity of opposites, or, quote, the division of a unity into mutually exclusive opposites and their reciprocal relation. The second, of course, is the Hegelian or dialectical approach. According to Lenin, the first interpretation fails to understand the source of the historical development because it...
Hang on. Breaking news. Breaking news. Thank you, Simona, for sending me this. Breaking news. As always, everyone gets to where I was at 2 years ago eventually. Timmy Tim has tweeted tonight, James Lindsay is a literal retard. Congratulations, Tim. We figured this shit out 2 years ago. Rare Tim Pool W. Timmy win. You know, he got there 2 years after us, but that's all right. That's all, everyone else is behind us too. It's okay, Tim. It's okay. Welcome to the party. We're not going to complain about the fact that you showed up late. We're going to celebrate the fact that you got to the party eventually. And you have realized, as we all did a long time ago, that James Lindsay is literally retarded. I just had to share that with everyone. All right. The whole show is going off the rails now. We are going to finish this lecture, though.
It fails to see that the movement is internal. Instead, it projects an external driving force like God or a subject. It is, he writes, lifeless, pale, and dry. By contrast, the second, more Hegelian approach focuses on self-movement and as a result offers a key to unlock the movement of history. It alone, he writes, furnishes the key to leaps, to the break in continuity, to the transformation into the opposite, to the destruction of the old and the emergence of the new. This unity of opposites, Lenin claims, helps understand all historical phenomena. In his words, it provides, quote, the recognition or discovery of the contradictory, mutually exclusive, opposite tendencies in all phenomena and processes of nature, including mind and society. The condition for the knowledge of all processes of the world in their self-movement, in their spontaneous development, in their real life, is the knowledge of them as a unity of opposites. And we can see this self-movement come into action. Lenin's meditations on self-movement in 1914-15
Meditations
shaped his political views and praxis in the years that followed, some of the most consequential years for Lenin and, of course, for Russia. Following the First Revolution of February 1917, which brought about the abdication of Nicholas II, Lenin called for a second workers' revolution. In the April Theses pronounced that month, in April 1917, again shortly after his study of Hegel's Science of Logic, Lenin argued that the Bolsheviks needed to mount a second proletarian revolution on the heels of the first bourgeois revolution. That alone would guarantee political change. Lenin wrote, "The specific feature of the present situation in Russia is that the country is passing from the first stage of the revolution, which, owing to the insufficient class consciousness and organization of the proletariat, placed power in the hands of the bourgeoisie, to its second stage, which must place power in the hands of the proletariat and the poorest sections of the peasants." Lenin's call for a second revolution can be understood, I suggest, through the lens of that second living conception of self-movement, the one that Lenin had just discovered at the core of Hegelianism a few months earlier in Hegel's Science of Logic. It represents the historical leap, break, transformation associated with the destruction of the old and the emergence of the new. And it resonates today as well. What we are experiencing today, in the first year of the second Trump mandate, is actually the equivalent of a first bourgeois revolution.
What?
The Trump revolution, or counter-revolution, is toppling the established political order.
Uh-huh. Is it
President
though?
Trump's revolution is bourgeois in the sense that it is an alliance formed primarily of well-off, retired, middle-class people and a handful of billionaires. The MAGA movement today is predominantly, at least 60%, white, Christian, and male, and a majority of MAGA members are retired and over 65 years of age. These are the bourgeois in American society.
Yeah, okay.
Today. They are the middle class, and they have flocked in droves to the MAGA camp. So although President Trump may be benefiting mostly billionaires through tax reform and government contracts, his revolution closely parallels the conventional bourgeois revolutions of the 18th and 20th centuries. Now, in those conventional first revolutions, which we often refer to as modern revolutions following Reinhard Koselleck, the bourgeoisie toppled an autocrat. Louis XVI, in the case of France, Tsar Nicholas II, in the case of the February Revolution in Russia, George III, in the case of the American colonies. By contrast, here in the United States now, there really was no autocrat. In fact, it was President Trump who is acting like an autocrat.
Oh, yeah?
And seizing imperial powers.
I fucking wish.
But I take it from the point of view of the MAGA base, The autocratic power that is being dismantled is a perceived deep state made up of Washington insiders and East Coast liberal elites who have entrenched their power and resources. There's a widely shared perception among MAGA proponents, and in fact, more broadly, that the American political system is broken and only benefiting the liberal elites. Laced through this criticism, there is this idea that power is concentrated in the hands of a cabal of technocratic and well-connected elites. So there is an analogous element in the MAGA revolution of unseating autocratic or concentrated power. What is missing, of course, are the large-scale societal upheavals that triggered the modern revolutions. The disastrous First World War in the case of Russia, bread shortages in the case of France, although perhaps we can imagine that the social media revolution and the advent of artificial intelligence, as well as globalization and the global climate change, amount to upheavals that also may have fueled the revolutionary sentiment. The key question that this raises, though, is why the left today is not calling for a second revolutionary movement in the wake of President Trump's first bourgeois revolution.
Oh, here we go.
This is especially puzzling because the American people, it seems, are so thirsty for radical politics. The far right has gotten so much momentum today precisely because it is radical, because it is channeling the widespread feeling that the political system is broken and only serves the interests of liberal elites, because it has appropriated Lenin and the Leninist language of smashing the state and draining the swamp. Once again,
wait, what?
Sadly, the left has been outmaneuvered on its own terrain.
This guy thinks that Trump is parroting the language of Lenin when he says drain the swamp. Again, sir?
People, it seems, are so thirsty for radical politics.
Hang on, we need to go back a little bit more.
Institution and of artificial intelligence, as well as globalization and the global climate change, amount to upheavals that also may have fueled the revolutionary sentiment. The key question that this raises, though, is why the left today is not calling for a second revolutionary movement in the wake of President Trump's first bourgeois revolution. This is especially puzzling because the American people, it seems, are so thirsty for radical politics. The far right has gotten so much momentum today precisely because it is radical, because it is channeling the widespread feeling that the political system is broken and only serves the interests of liberal elites, because it has appropriated Lenin and the Leninist language of smashing the state and draining the swamp.
Wow.
Once again, sadly, the left has been outmaneuvered on its own terrain. And in my view, it is time to reclaim the Hegelian lineage of Lenin and the key idea of self-movement, to take advantage of the smashing of the state by Trump, and to call for a second social movement to overcome President Trump's revolution and bring about a new and just society.
Oh, yeah?
On the basis of solidarity and cooperation.
Solidarity,
rather
comrade?
than hate and exclusion.
Wow.
Now let's look at the dialectics of smashing the state machine.
Yes, let's do that.
As I intimated earlier, many on the left worry that the idea of smashing the state is not very dialectical and thus too blunt an instrument. But I think it's important to distinguish the state from the state machine in Lenin's language and politics and in his argument. It turns out that Lenin had a deeply dialectical relationship to the state. The state was something that he imagined continuing after the second movement, or, in more technical jargon, he believed it would be sublated, not eliminated. Lenin called for smashing the state machine, but at the same time, he also acknowledged that the state would continue in a different form, namely through direct mass self-governing by industrial and agricultural workers. What he advocated for was a dialectical transformation of the state that would ultimately lead to its overcoming, the famous references to the state withering away, when there was no longer any class conflict in society. And he believed it would wither away eventually because, on his view, the state's primary function is to maintain and enforce class privilege, but that would eventually evaporate with the elimination of classes. So the state continues to exist, in Lenin's view, even after the state machine is smashed, at least until some distant future when there are no classes in society anymore.
That's communism, guys.
Smashing the state machine can be distinguished from smashing the state. Kevin Anderson kind of explains this in his work on Hegel and Lenin. He writes, "The age of imperialism, with its monopoly capitalism and ever greater centralized planning, had created what Lenin termed the process of transformation of monopoly capitalism into state monopoly capitalism, which meant a strengthened state machine ruling over the workers." Now, and Lenin specifically referred to, in his words, an extraordinary strengthening of the state machine and an unprecedented growth in its bureaucratic and military apparatus in connection with the intensification of repressive measures against the proletariat.
Yes, you're
Lenin
smarter
was
than a lot of
opposed to
people,
working
Amalek,
with
okay?
this type of state machine and advocated instead for its destruction. But the state machine was different than the state. Drawing on Marx's description of the Paris Commune in his 1871 essay, Civil War in France, Lenin advocated for political power to be held in the hands of the Soviets, the worker and peasant councils. Lenin aspired to a transformation towards a political condition in which everyone would take on, at times, the responsibilities of the state machine, so that no one would be a pure bureaucrat.
Okay.
And the state machinery would not crystallize in any one class.
So what he's talking about, this is actually something I want to stop to explain to people. People ask, and actually some people asked earlier today in the chat, how do you run a society with no hierarchy? Because we talked earlier about how the left wants to eliminate things like the Senate, the courts, but also the presidency, the executive, because the executive is the hierarchy. Now, a lot of people assume that, you know, the left wants to be in charge and they just want to be the ones calling the shots. Well, no, that's not actually what they're proposing. What the left proposes is basically a society in which people take on leadership roles, but they don't take them on forever. There's like a purposeful transition, like frequent transition of people who are leading things. So, for example, you and your community might be put on the executive committee for who is in charge of the food supply, but you're not going to be on that committee forever. You're going to do like a year term, and then you're going to be replaced by someone else, and then you're going to go back into the proletariat ranks or whatever. So there's always people who are kind of like, think about them as like point people, or think about them as committees. But one of the things the left calls for is frequent changes of leadership. So like, and I'm not good at explaining this yet. I need to figure out how to explain this to people a little bit better, so please bear with me. But they call for frequent changes in leadership so that you never have the bureaucracy where someone is always in a leadership position. Yeah, all the people in quote unquote leadership positions, it's a temporary appointment. And it's not even like you have elections or something. There's just transitions in leadership. That is what they're talking about. And so no, it's not like, well, kind of. So like if there were term limits in Congress, this would kind of be what we're talking about. Except that like someone wouldn't be able to get reelected to Congress. So it's not even like, it's like you get one term. You get one term in leadership and there is no reelection, and then you are replaced by someone else, essentially. So that's what we're talking about. So now he just said that. Does everyone understand what I just said? So it's like they envision very participatory like social systems where it's like anyone can show up to the committee hearing to talk and to air grievances or to offer suggestions or stuff like that. And then there's a board or committee that kind of is in charge of like managing all of the people. And so they take turns being in like the leadership position. So that's what he just said. Now listen again.
Lenin aspired to a transformation towards a political condition in which everyone would take on, at times, the responsibilities of the state machine so that no one would be a pure bureaucrat. And
everyone would take on the responsibilities of the state machine so that no one would be a pure bureaucrat. Now, guys, I want to emphasize this. No. Stop debunking. Stop this bullshit. This is, Michelle, I know you mean well. I don't mean a personal attack, but this is why the right does not understand the left. Because all the right does is listen to debunk them, and they say, that's not going to work, or here's all the problems with this, or blah. You need to understand what they're actually proposing. The reason the right has no fuck off clue what the left actually believes is the right does not listen. They don't listen to what the ideas are. If you cannot explain what the left's ideas are, then you do not understand them. This is a sincerely held belief that this is how they want their society to function. And guys, the reality is, and I've been in more leftist spaces than pretty much anyone else here, with the exception of a couple former Antifa people who have probably been in it more than I, the left actually does run their organizations like this. I've been in their spaces. I've seen this myself. They run their conferences like this. They run their events like this. They run their lecture series like this. This is actually the left does actually put this stuff into practice in the real world. All you need to do is to go to one of their events and you'll see it. There are people who organize the events. They take turns being the lead on the event. There is a Q&A portion where anyone can come up and say whatever they want. The organizers of the event are mitigating it. The organizers of the event are not dictating it. They're mitigating it. And so they actually do this in the real world. So this is the vision they have for society. Now, will it work? No, probably not. But that doesn't mean that's not their vision for society. And it doesn't mean they don't try to make this happen in the real world even today. So again, we do not debunk on this channel because there is no debunk that you can put in this chat that we haven't heard before. And it only prevents you from understanding what the left actually wants to do. So again, listen.
The worker and peasant councils. Lenin aspired to a transformation towards a political condition in which everyone would take on, at times, the responsibilities of the state machine so that no one would be a pure bureaucrat and the state machinery would not crystallize in any one class. Lenin wrote, "Abolishing the bureaucracy at once, everywhere and completely, is out of the question. It is a utopia. But to smash the old bureaucratic machine at once and to begin immediately to construct a new one that will make possible the gradual abolition of all bureaucracy, that is not a utopia. It is the experience of the commune, the direct and immediate task of the revolutionary proletariat." Or, in another passage,
you know, guys, you know what we've never heard on this channel before? You know what we have never heard on this channel before? Communism! kills more people than any other form of government. Guys, Sassy, we've never heard that before. You're the very first person to say that in the 4-year history of Socialism Saturday. Really? Really? Are you telling me that communism has never been tried? Really? Are you sure? Are you sure do you know how many fucking times we have to hear this? It doesn't fucking matter. Your job on Socialism Saturday is to listen to what's being said, to understand what the left actually believes. Do you think that you changed anything by saying, you know what, guys, communism kills a lot of people and it's really this is why we don't fucking debunk. Has anyone's mind been changed by the brilliant debunk that communism kills people? Did you change anyone's mind tonight? No. Did you learn anything about what the left actually believes tonight? Probably not. Because you're not listening to them. You're just waiting to debunk them. Thanks for that breaking news update.
The time is near when they, the workers, must act to smash the old state machine, replace it by a new one, and in this way make their political rule the foundation for the socialist reorganization of society. Or, yet, in another passage, one that Kevin Anderson cites, Lenin writes, "The workers, after winning political power, will smash the old bureaucratic apparatus, shatter it to its very foundations, and raze it to the ground. They will replace it by a new one consisting of the very same workers and other employees, against whose transformation into bureaucrats the measures will at once be taken which were specified in detail by Marx and Engels. First, not only..."
This is an interesting question. Catlin says, how would state secrets and foreign policy work? Okay, in communism, there are no states. In communism, there are no borders. In communism, there are no countries. They believe the reason that real communism has not been tried is because we have not tried communism on a global scale. So the definition of this is really important for people who are new. The left's definition of capitalism is private property ownership. What do you need to have private property? You need a border. Borders around states, borders around countries, borders around cities, borders around counties, borders around your home. All borders for the left are a manifestation of capitalism. In order for real communism to have been tried, they believe that literally every country needs to be communist, that we need to overthrow global capitalism, because they don't believe that one communist country can exist surrounded by capitalist countries, because the capitalist countries will just attack the communist country. So to go back to your question around how would foreign policy work, won't be no foreign policy because there won't be no countries, because there won't be any borders. This is why it's so important to go back to the definitions, guys, because once you understand the left's definition of capitalism, you understand there's no foreign policy. There's no borders. There's no countries. And by the way, and this is a great point from Andre, they also want to get rid of banks, money, fences, walls, checkpoints. Under the left, there is no money. They want to get rid of that entirely. There's no banks. There's no prisons. There's just chaos and stuff like that. Hey, thanks to you ladies for the super chat. My support and your patience for those clueless people who don't want to understand. Thank you again, always, after all these years. Much love and respect. Julietta and Jenny say hi. Love you guys. Thank you, two ladies. Thank you, Julietta. Thank you, Jenny. We appreciate all of you. Thank you for the ongoing support.
Only election, but also recall at any time. Second, pay not to exceed that of a workman. Third, immediate introduction of control by all, so that all may become bureaucrats for a time, and that therefore nobody may be able to become a, quote, bureaucrat.
All become bureaucrats for a time, and
Now,
so no one
just
becomes a
word of
bureaucrat.
caution. I do not intend to get bogged down in a Leninology. nor in the intricate details of Lenin's debate with Karl Kautsky or Rosa Luxemburg, any more that I want to get caught up in Steve Bannon's claim to be a Leninist, nor in his interpretations, crude interpretations, of Lenin. My point is that there is a dialectical nature, and in this sense, a Hegelian dimension to Lenin's call to smash the state machine. It is not pure negativity, not pure destruction, but instead a call for a different state apparatus. There is self-movement here. There's dialectical movement here. And this, too, resonates today. There is no doubt that neither President Trump nor Steve Bannon are calling to simply smash the state. They do not advocate anarchism. They, too, are transforming the state machine into another state form. So President Trump is smashing the administrative state to create a more concentrated police state. Trump's big, beautiful bill turned ICE into the largest law enforcement agency in American history.
2 ladies with the 10 gifted channel memberships. Let's see, you got a channel membership over on YouTube thanks to 2 ladies. Let's see. Outdoor Loser got one. Rami got one. Reality Is got one. Quentin got one. Michelle got one. Pyro got one. Laughing Eyes got one. Teresa, Mel, Mary. Congratulations to everyone who got a gifted membership from 2 ladies. I really do appreciate that, bro. Thank you. Very nice. Very nice.
And funded new ICE detention facilities to the tune of $45 billion. President Trump has rebuilt the camp at Guantanamo Bay into a massive deportation facility. He has transformed the Department of Defense into the Department of War, has dropped bunker-busting bombs in Iran, and is waging a new and unprecedented military assault on suspected traffickers in international waters. And even with regard to the agencies that he has gutted, like the Department of Education or others, President Trump is reconstituting their missions through coercive pay-for-play agreements, such as those with individual law firms, research universities, and foreign countries. This represents a vision of a robust police state, one that has massed ICE agents kidnapping persons based on the color of their skin, and military personnel policing urban cities.
What?
It's also a walled state. It would be far too naive to suggest that President Trump is simply smashing the state. He is instead birthing a police state. And that should tell us something. Given that President Trump is already dismantling the administrative state, with or without our approval, and in the face of little resistance by the Democratic Party, the best strategy for the left, what I have called elsewhere the counter move or the jujitsu, is rather than opposing.
Hang on, we got a Rumble rant from Effectual Insurrection. Trump fired Steve Bannon for leaking. He actually called him Sloppy Steve. He's not in the administration in 2024. He is naval intelligence. Thank you for all you do, Dr. Cave. Yeah, I wasn't even going to say this. Like, Steve Bannon isn't even involved in the Trump administration, and Trump doesn't even like him. But, never let a Columbia University professor, I guess. I don't know. Why do the left promote open borders? Again, so the left's the ultimate goal of the left is always to abolish capitalism. The left defines capitalism as private property ownership. What do you need to have private property? You need a border. So borders are not just around your house. Borders are around your city, borders around your state, borders around your country. They believe borders are a manifestation of capitalism. Therefore, they believe that borders should not exist. Appreciate the super chat. Thanks so much. Guys, we got about 5 more minutes. We are almost done. Congrats to everyone who's made it through the entire 3.5-hour episode of Socialism Saturday. We're going to listen to the rest of this guy talk. Hopefully he says some spicy things. I do just want to remind everyone, we do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. I may do protest coverage tonight. I may do live protest coverage tonight. I may go back and watch what happened in Chicago today because there was a lot of stuff going on in Chicago. So I may do that. I'm not promising that. We're going to wrap up this stream. I'm going to take a little bit of a break and then I might come back. I mean, it's supposed to be Saturday and, maybe something's going on in Portland. I don't know. But, we got to get back into the swing of doing protest coverage. I understand, but I'm going to go eat a burrito or something after this, and I might come back, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how I feel about it.
What he is doing, redirecting the force and momentum of his actions towards a progressive agenda, creating more fairness, justice, opportunity for all, especially the working class.
Have a hot toddy. That's
The
a good
left
idea.
should seize the momentum and push a secondary revolutionary moment today along the lines of Lenin's April Theses. The time for restoration is over. Bannon the Leninist must be overcome.
Bannon the
There needs to be a
Leninist.
second self-movement.
Burritos do have a flower border. It's
What
true.
shape should this second social movement
Burritos are
take? That,
capitalist.
I think, is the most urgent, the most important question for the left to address today. It is what the left needs to figure out most pressingly. And only a
Hang on. Off topic. Costin helped the Portland Police Department catch the rock hitter. Cool. Well, good for him. Costin's doing a great job. Appreciate it.
handful of political leaders seem to be attuned to this. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Zoran Mandami. But this is the key question for the left now. Violent revolution, like Lenin's Bolshevik revolution, is out of the question, if for no other reason than that the far right is the only violent revolutionary force in American society today and is armed to the teeth. The far right is far more likely to engage in armed revolution than any other faction of American society.
I fucking wish!
And more likely to win. So violence is off the table. But what then could a second uprising look like? I think it would be a massive movement for solidarity and cooperation in the face of the hate, exclusion, and violence that is spewing forth in the Trump administration, from the masked ICE agents to the summary executions in international waters to the military flooding our urban streets. What we need now is a massive counter-movement showering solidarity and cooperation throughout every facet of our lives. This could include universal health care, as in most of our peer countries, job training programs for everyone to retool in the age of artificial intelligence, mental health care for all, promoting worker cooperatives, food cooperatives, and housing cooperatives to create affordable housing. It would mean creating organizations that prioritize all of the stakeholders, communities, and the environment, rather than simply the investors. These ideas and more are what we need to focus on now, immediately, to set off a second wave, a chain reaction, a second revolutionary progressive self-movement to overcome the Trump revolution.
Thanks, average person, for the super chat. Parroting off the RCA guy. Maybe one day we'll show them who the real far right is. Maybe one day. Maybe one day the real far right will actually, do something. Obviously, it's tough, right? It's tough because every time the real far right tries to do something, it ends up in a total and complete shit show. And I think they're kind of terrified because of all the Charlottesville stuff, and they should be terrified because that was a total and complete, shit show, and that didn't go so well. And obviously disavow and all that stuff. Obviously, everyone involved in Charlottesville is a horrible, awful, racist, and neo-Nazi, and we disavow all of them, obviously. But I'm just saying, there's a reason they don't do nothing, and it's because they're all afraid. And it's kind of like, man, you know what? I'm just glad that people are finally tuning in to the discussion about, maybe a good first step is that people are finally waking up to the fact that we should not be supporting Israel. Maybe that's got to be enough. What if we went to Charlottesville all 4 times? Well, that would just make you a massive, massive, massive troublemaker, wouldn't it? Which I'm sure you would never do such a thing. Why would you ever go to Charlottesville? I just don't even understand. You're just making a joke right now. You would never actually do that.
Never let a serious crisis go to waste. The expression should be familiar, even if it's usually associated with the right. You will recall that Philip Murawski used it in the title of his eponymous book to describe how neoliberals took advantage of the Great Recession to further their agenda of free market liberalism. Naomi Klein drew on the idea to describe Chicago neocons in her book, The Shock Doctrine. And even though the expression is often attributed to Winston Churchill, it's clear that it has been appropriated again and again by the far right. It is Bannon's key strategy. Well, here too, there is a connection to Lenin. In his writings on the Irish popular uprisings, which he considered premature, Lenin nonetheless praised the revolts for contributing to the self-movement of history.
True.
He wrote, "The dialectics of history are such that small nations, powerless as an independent factor in the struggle against imperialism, play a part as one of the ferments, one of the bacilli, which help the real anti-imperialist force, the socialist proletariat, to make its appearance on the scene." You could hardly sound more Hegelian than that. Lenin was clearly Hegelian there. And after praising the Irish uprising, Lenin adds, quote, "We would be very poor revolutionaries if we did not know how to utilize every popular movement against every single disaster imperialism brings in order to intensify and extend the crisis. It is time again for the left to seize the momentum and not let this crisis go to waste.
Wow.
The stakes are too high." Thanks for listening. This essay is part of the new Hegel 1313 public seminars. And you can read and learn about the Hegel 1313 seminars and watch and listen to the upcoming sessions on the website, hegel1313.law.columbia.edu.
You love this guy? This guy's great because this guy gave a whole fucking lecture at Columbia University about how the left should try to overthrow the government. This is like, guys, one in the chat, if you remember when the Trump administration swore up and down that they had fixed Columbia because the Trump administration fined Columbia like millions of dollars, and Columbia bent the knee to the Trump administration and they said, "We're so sorry, Trump, and here's millions of dollars, and we promise not to be woke again." One in the chat, if you remember when the Trump administration swore up and down that they fixed the woke Columbia University. Well, I'm sorry, Trump administration, but this lecture was given 2 weeks ago and at the Columbia Center for Critical Thought. And it's literally a 40 fucking minute lecture about how the left should rise up and overthrow the fucking state. Like, we only made one clip of it, but this is a 40-minute fucking lecture about how the left needs to stop being pussies and need to rise up and overthrow the evil Trump administration. And yeah, it has 6,700 views. And you're telling me that the Trump administration fixed the woke nonsense at Columbia University? Sure. Yeah. Yup, that definitely happened, guys. That definitely happened. Trump wasn't bullshitting when he said that. It definitely happened. You know, like when universities are fixed with woke nonsense, there's definitely 40-minute lectures on their fucking YouTube channels about how they should overthrow the state. I wish I could remember the channel where I heard a leftist group talking about nationalism and how to watch out for that. Seems strange to me. Oh yeah, I have all sorts of leftist zines talking about the problem of nationalism and stuff like that. They do that very, very, very frequently. Yeah. He not only gave a speech about overthrowing the U.S. government, he also gave a speech about creating a parallel and subversive citizenry that is unaccountable to the state and the federal government. He did, didn't he? He did. And he did it in this very kind of like calm NPR voice with these faggoty glasses and stuff like this. And so like no one's going to take this guy seriously, and he just gave a 40 fucking minute lecture about overthrowing the state. I'm just saying. Ain't no one else showing you this stuff on the internet, guys. I'm the only person covering this type of content on the internet, so I hope you all appreciate it. That is going to conclude our episode of Socialism Saturday for tonight. As a reminder, guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing, the very best place to do it is over on my Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. You guys keep me in business. You guys allow me to do what I do, doing Socialism Saturdays, doing my streams Monday through Friday, 5 p.m., where we talk about other leftist stuff as well. Again, I might be back to do protest coverage tonight. I might not be. It really just depends. I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to go eat some food. I'm going to see what's going on with the protest coverage, and I might go live again tonight. If I don't, I will see you when I see you. But that is going to conclude us for tonight. I appreciate everyone hanging out. Congratulations if you made it through the entire episode, especially if it was your first episode of Socialism Saturday, because this one was a heavy episode. They're not all like this, okay? So we will be doing more leftist coverage all throughout the week, of course. And I might be back later tonight. Might be back, might not be back. We'll have to see. Maybe I want to do more yelling on the internet. I don't know. But anyway, mount the like button, guys. Turn on notifications to the channel if you have not already. And I'll see you when I see you. Take care, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here? 3 months, May 17th. And what brought you? That's difficult to answer. I am not completely like other people. What do you mean by that? trying to do with your life? Play the piano for the people. I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital? That's difficult to answer.